Sup, everyone. So I'm here with 4 ENFJ men, and we're here to answer a whole bunch of questions. I know a lot of people have been actually requesting this one for a long time now. And funny enough, there's supposed to be two more, but literally last minute, one of them said they couldn't make it. And then about like 2 days ago, another one said they couldn't make it. But I think that we have ample here. We have some questions that we're going to be answering, and we're just going to be discussing some stuff and like having some fun. So welcome to the ENFJ Sausage Party, and I'm going to allow each of them to introduce themselves, starting with Lonnie.
All right. So what's good, everybody? I'm Lonnie, by the way. It's nice to be here. The ENFJ as well. A couple of things about myself. 24 years old. Currently live in Miami, Florida. Actually, one of my, I guess you could say one of my, passions or interests is I'm really into like cooking and baking. So I'm actually a vegan chef. I've been doing that for the past few years. I actually went to school for that, culinary school. So that's been one of like my big interests, as long as like, music and like writing poetry and different stuff like that. So that's just like a little bit about myself.
All right. So I think I'm unmuted. All right. My name is Salvador. I am originally born in Ohio. Now I'm living in Texas. I'm 20 years old, about to be 21. And something about me, some stuff about me. I've been going to college. I'm waiting like another semester until I re-enroll. But I was originally doing some studying in like pharmacology and biology, but I switched to psychiatry as my major, or psychology as my major, because as I started doing some digging, especially into this type of stuff, I realized how much more into just like the psyche and human behavior and stuff like that I've been just in my entire life in general. But yeah, that's me.
Hi guys, my name is Emrys. I'm currently teaching and tutoring as a job. I'm into psychology, sociology, culture, spirituality, staying up till 3 a.m., having great conversations, and swing dancing at formal occasions. That's about it.
Yo, my name's Cam. I'm from DC, born and raised, represent. And I'm a creative director at a church, which basically means I do everything but the preaching. It gives me a chance to kind of put together the music, do the website, stage design, that type of thing. That's me.
Cool. That's happy to have you here. And pretty much today is just going to be, like I said, a big conversation about being men, ENFJ men at that, because we are actually, from the most recent poll or the most recent survey, the least common male personality type aside from the INFJ worldwide. And when we look out into the world and everything like that, like we see like the famous ones, like like Martin Luther King Jr., Nelson Mandela, and then you'll even have like some fictional one. I don't know, like everybody knows Iroh from Avatar: The Last Airbender. I talk about like Tobin Frost. And even recently, I dropped like an archetype video of like the 5 different kinds of ENFJ and like how they can like show up and stuff like that. So I wanted to kind of give an example of different ENFJ men and how we might in the world and some of our perspectives for those who might be watching. So without further ado, I brought up 6 questions and a bonus. And in the same that we answered, I would like for us to be able to kind of like address these questions and just have some discussion about it and like just probably have some fun tonight. When did you find out you were an ENFJ, and what differences do you think you have from most other men, if any?
This is a really good question. It's crazy actually, because when you really like, you're the reason why I found out. Because I remember I first learned about like Myers-Briggs, personality type system. I learned about that like in 2016, And I remember, like, I thought I was an INFJ for the longest. I was like, yo, I'm an INFJ. Like, I got the result on the test, like, mad times. And I was, like, really convinced for, like, probably, like, 3-4 years, really. And then last year with Denzel, we had, like, a typing session. And he actually broke it down and showed me everything. He was like, no, like, you actually, based on how you progressed over your life and just, like, the conversations we had, like, I'm actually ENFJ. And it kind of, like, at first I didn't really see it, but then it kind of made sense too, because, like, one of my favorite rappers, J. Cole, right? And J. Cole is believed to be an ENFJ. And I always related to him, like, a lot. And I was just like, yo, like, something about him that, like, I always kind of could just relate to, like, how he thinks and stuff. And, like, I feel like growing up, I could always see the differences between how I was from, like, other men. Like, I think I was naturally always more in tune with I guess you say, like, my emotions and stuff like that. And I was, like, very highly intuitive. Like, I was always really good at, like, noticing patterns and different things like that, picking up on, like, things before, like, most people could. And I couldn't always explain that to other people all the time. And I feel like as a man, like, I don't really think in society that's, like, it's not really the norm, you know what I'm saying? Like, typically men are looked at, it's supposed to be, like, more logical and, like, decisive, which I can be good at that as well. But, like, I feel like I've always kind of been a little bit more in the middle, you know what I'm saying? Like, more balanced with, like, my emotional side and my, like, logical, analytical side. So I would kind of say, like, to answer your question, those are probably the main things that make me, I feel like, stand out from other men. And, like, that was, like, how I found out I was an ENFJ.
Nice. I'm gonna just throw in there too, like, yeah, that J. Cole, a lot of people, like, I remember I posted a deep dive video breaking up, like, with different interviews and everything, because people like, nah, man, he's INFJ, like, can't you see, like, how calm he is, and he's so deep and stuff, and I'm like, bro, like, look at this video, like, and watch the progression of how he went from FESE, like, talking about, like, a whole bunch of, like, material stuff and everything, to, like, being like, wait a minute. And he started going into more substantial. And we're looking at how he is right now. It's like a 33-year-old man, but it's like, everybody's going to grow, like, more calm, as they get older, kind of thing. So, well, every ENFJ is. So it's just like, yeah, but I'm glad that you found the truth.
Yeah, facts. Appreciate it.
All right. So I actually found out not too long ago. It's only been about 2 years since I've found out even what Myers-Briggs really was. I don't even remember exactly what my family was doing. They were doing some, like, kind of like DBT therapy and just doing, like, a bunch of different things, and we're just taking certain tests online, and then they stumbled across the Myers-Briggs test, and then none of them even really knew what it meant or anything. They just all took it, and then, like, it came downstairs one day, and then they were just, like, looking at what they got, and then I was like, what's that? And they're like, oh, it's a personality test. So I was like, oh, okay, because I've, like, since then, like, I always did all the ones that people would, like, make online that were kind of BS, like, just random ones, like, that they have, like, out of all these mental disorders, which one would you most likely have, and just random stuff like that. So I always, like, was interested in those, because even though I know they didn't really hold anything substantially, that it was just interesting. So I was like, oh, it's an actual personality type test. So I went to take it, and I got an ENFJ. And I was like, okay, that's cool. And I was just looking at what all the people in my family got, and everyone else kind of left it at that. But then I was, like, looking at all the different things, like the typical career paths, the parenting styles, the relationships, that dynamics and stuff like that, and about men and women specifically men, actually. But I just found it super interesting. So from there, I had just been learning more and more about it. And then as of the past year is when I really started learning more about it, specifically the functions, and, like, exactly what they mean and how sometimes they work, like the FESE jumping and stuff like that. But anyway, the main differences I spotted in me and other men is that usually, obviously, like he said, I'm more in touch with my, like, emotional side just in general. than most guys that I would come across or even know. Not in just the sense of like I am emotional, but in the sense that I'm able to communicate exactly what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling and why, and being able to understand also simultaneously what the other person is like, just from what they're saying, how they are feeling about it, and just having a really good understanding of exactly just emotional dynamics and social interplay. And another really big one is also like, sorry, I had it written down here. Also, like Lonnie said about the being able to like think rationally and logically, as well as understanding certain things like on an emotional level. I feel like I'm really good at being able to hold a good medium to where like when it comes down to figuring out if I need to be more logical or more like understanding about how individuals are being affected, or just looking at it objectively. I feel like I can do both when whichever one needs to be applied is going to be used. So I feel like I have a really good in the middle between those, so I know when to use one or the other, if that makes sense. And yeah, that's pretty much it.
I found out I was an ENFJ back in university, freshman year or sophomore year. It was kind of a gradual process. I mainly found out by taking a test on Personality Hacker and then downloading their little packet explaining how the cognitive functions show up in ENFJs. And it resonated with me very quickly. And especially with the explanations of the cognitive functions, I knew very quickly that it was an accurate description. As for how I tend to be different from most men, or at least different from the stereotype or values for masculinity held in our culture, is a few of the things that have already been said, like extremely strong empathy, strong ability to understand other people's emotions and to express my own emotions and my own thoughts in a social scene. I would also say that from early on, I found social interaction to be the most enjoyable and desired form of pastime or recreation. Like rather than wanting to play a lot of sports or wanting to play a lot of games, like when I was growing up in a youth group, I was usually wanting to like go inside and sit with everybody who just wanted to sit down, play card games, and talk. I remember my greatest joys in childhood were mainly built around that, like staying up really late, having deep conversations with friends, or going on 8-hour road trips packed together in a van with like 10 other people because there was so much social interaction going on. I would also say that intuition has played a bigger role in my life, as some people have mentioned already. I don't think it's a very common expectation for men to like trust their intuition or operate on intuition or like get gut feelings about things and just go with it. I think that's way more encouraged among women in our society. And I think that for me, physical activities like sports and stuff were always more of a happy, playful thing than a competitive thing. Like tertiary SE, it was more about just like kind of casually having fun than ever like caring about competing with others. Even in things like board games, I never had a very strong competition. It was always about like just having fun. And then introverted thinking being fourth in my stack, I think has led to attempting to develop an internal logical structure to explain reality as a comfort or security mechanism. And I think that the expectation for men in our society is more in lines with like extroverted thinking, where you're using logic to go and make pragmatic decisions in everyday life and like figure out how to get out there and make moves. And for me, it was more about trying extensively to understand reality, working with that intuition and always asking why. And initially that led to more of an attempt to feel safe by, or use logic to feel safe. Like I understand everything, and then gradually turned into turning back outward to the external world from the introverted functions and finding that I could use them in the external world. But that took a while.
Well, if nothing else, I've realized that all four of you are much more intelligent than I am. I am just I recently found out about this whole thing. It was from Denzel. I call him DZ. And he always just from the first time we really ever had a full conversation, he always just alluded to the fact that, I was ENFJ, and the whole concept of, Myers-Briggs or personality traits. First of all, it didn't sit right with me to begin with, which come to find out is probably an ENFJ trait to begin to as well, not wanting to fit inside that box. But the more that I thought about it, the more that I heard about it, still am coming to terms with it. But I think the thing that really resonated with me as far as the, general descriptor is empathy, right? Almost to the point of like being a psychopath, right? Like, I don't know if that's the correct term, but like maybe you guys can relate. You can really see almost everything from anyone's point of view, right? It's really hard to take somebody who's done something, even something really terrible, and not try to, at least from an objective place, try to figure out where their headspace was at. And that's something that I've just always done. And it kind of freaked me out a little bit, especially once I got to college and started thinking a little bit more deeply about, the craziness out in the world. But I found myself pseudo rationalizing why people did the things that they did. And it was scary, but it was also, I think, like one of my superpowers. I could make friends with anybody because I could see where they were coming from. So that's probably the biggest thing that I think separates me from some of the other guys.
Yeah, Cam, he definitely did have a hard time like coming around. For y'all who like really follow my channel, y'all probably recognize Cam. Y'all probably also recognize Emrys, of course, and Lonnie. This is Salvador's first time on my channel, but y'all probably recognize Cam from a couple previous videos, the one on how to know if an ENFJ likes you, that documentary kind of thing. And then also the one where I was explaining how I proposed to Jamila. So y'all probably have a little bit of like a idea of like how Cam was. And
throwbacks,
man. And that's why we got to just keep on creating these. But also like, yeah, just like seeing Cam, if anything, it was funny because Jamila was the first one to point out to me that Cameron is an NFJ. She wasn't sure if he was INFJ or ENFJ. And I remember like one big thing that she told me was like Cameron was like in or something, and like Jamila was there with him and someone else. And as he was getting his hair cut, then he was just sitting there like, and Jamila was like, yeah, I don't know. Like, he's just like really like whatever, but he is so socially aware and yada, yada, yada. I'm like, okay, yeah, I mean, I don't sit in the barber chair like that. I'm talking to the barber. So, I mean, I guess he could be an INFJ. She's like, yeah, but sometimes he does seem ENFJ. It's like, I don't know. Like, yeah, I don't know. That's when I started getting like familiarized with Cam, like paying attention to him. And I think it hit me most, not that an INFJ wouldn't and can't do this, but me, Cameron, and Trevante, the ESFP that's usually on my channel, we were all in the car. Cameron was driving us somewhere, and we had gotten good news about something. Cameron stops the car in the middle of, not the road, but like kind of like some type of like cul-de-sac area, and he hops out, and we're all like, what is he doing? And this man starts running around the car, screaming at the top of his lungs in the middle of campus. And I'm like,
yo,
oh, yeah,
I didn't do that, bro. That was a different Cam.
This man, I was like, yeah, this man's an ENFJ. And then it was confirmed time and time again with like DZ Mensah, like how he just brought the energy every time like he showed up. But at the same time, like everyone was like, what Cam was known for most was like just how giving and like kind he was, on top of how talented of a musician that he was and everything too. And on top of that, I remember that he was also really good at Mafia, which I suspect is just like NTJs, they love chess. And I think that NFJs, we like chess. But I think that chess is more of like an NTJ kind of thing, like NITE. But I think that Mafia is an NFJ game, because instead of like, strategizing chess pieces, we're strategizing like people. And dare I say, deception or reading the room and knowing how to like sway it in certain ways. And then Cameron and I have played Mafia a couple of times, and I even have a pretty popular video of us playing Mafia once where he pretty much really read the room.
Is because his perceptiveness is one of his key attributes. However, in this case, at the beginning of the round, he was on his phone. Now, the Denzel that I know would never be on his phone at the beginning of a round so crucial as this one. However, he who shall not be named just might as well be. No, because they are two different people. The Denzel I know and love is not here.
Yo, why is he such a clown?
This man is a murderer.
He would be more invested. He's very invested.
Think about that. Think about that. Let me get an ace.
So we have Taylor, we have Cameron. Is there anyone else being accused?
That all being said, yes, like Cameron, he definitely took a while to like come around to like learning more about it. And even then he's not like as familiar with like the cognitive functions and all of that. But it's been a journey. I'm even glad to like have him like on my channel like once again. So just had to throw that out there. For me, I found out that I was an ENFJ. I always forget the year. I want to say 2014 or 2015, one of those years. And when I found out, it was actually like, that was just mind blowing for me because I had always already felt very different from a lot of men around me. I don't view myself as effeminate, in the stereotypical way. I don't view myself as emotional. I personally don't cry. And I know that there's nothing really like wrong with crying. I'm just saying like I have a pretty stable mood, which is just like contentment and just like gratitude in a way. And I'm pretty like even keel. But ever since I was younger, I've always like, number one, I don't know how many of y'all like relate. Y'all can raise your hands if you do or don't. But like, I've always had a closer relationship with women growing up than I did with men. Like I related easier to the women. And that was because, in my opinion, like from when I was growing up, like I was trying to connect with a lot of men, especially growing up in the Bronx. I would try to like connect with them. And they, especially back then, like I said, like they were like, yo, like I'm trying to get deep and stuff, like, yo, nigga, you gay? Like, stuff like that. Like, and I'm like, whoa, back then, especially like the last thing you want to be seen as is homosexual, And so it's like, okay, I guess I'm going to stop trying to be like as deep with these guys. We're just going to stick to playing basketball and stuff like that. I'm not going to ask about their personal lives, whatever. And they didn't have problems with me. I didn't have problems with them. But when I started talking to the women, though, then they would like come to me and like they would like vent to me about certain things. I helped explain a whole bunch of like social dynamics to them. I helped be like the mediator to them for men. And when I would like when they were like dating guys that I knew, and then the guys were like playing with them and everything like that, like I was the one to like tell the men like, yo, that's not cool, man. Like, that's my friend, like, and that's just not cool in general. You know what I mean? And not even like help the women and be like, nah, that's not a good dude that you should like really go date unless if you're looking for this kind of thing. And so I was the one that was like really helping in that situation. And yeah, I had a lot more attunement to empathy, just like all of y'all were pretty much saying. And I didn't have the stereotypical kind of like what Emrys was saying, like what we call like extroverted thinking, like, super decisive and like logical and like detached, like looking at Vegeta, for example, from Dragon Ball Z, that kind of like, like I'm a man, I can't like touch my daughter. I don't, stuff like that. It's like, no, like I love being able to express and to be affectionate to people while still being able to lead effectively. So that was like some of like the biggest ways that I saw that I was like different from a lot of other guys. And I loved talking about feelings, like not like, oh, let's all cry together kind of thing, but like I love being able to like talk about like what I've been noticing in the social sphere. And I just really loved connection. Like it seemed like I enjoyed depth of connection more than any of the other guys that I knew around me, with the exception of my INFJ friend David, who is an INFJ, and he was a male, but he was also an Enneagram 5. Which, by the way, let me just run through the Enneagram types real quick because I know the people in the comments are going to be asking. Lonnie is an Enneagram 3, social sexual, I believe. He could be social self-preservation, but I think that he's social sexual.
Yeah.
I know that Emrys. Oh yeah, go ahead, Lonnie.
No, I was gonna say Enneagram 3 wing 4. But
Yeah,
I forgot the social thing though, to be honest.
yeah. And then Emrys, I don't know his wing. I want to say 3 wing 2. I know that he's a sexual 3 though, so he's Enneagram sexual 3 and then social second, I believe. I know that Cameron is an ENFJ social 7, self-preservation second. And then Salvador, I don't know if you know your Enneagram type yet.
I don't know what those words mean, the social and the sexual, but I do want to have sex.
Hey,
That's important.
this man funny, yo.
Yeah. I kind of forgot what the like, because you said something self-preservation, social, sexual. I didn't know if when you have a Enneagram type with the wing if it's just one of those. But to my knowledge, I'm a 2 wing 3 sexual. I don't really know. Like I said, I'm not really familiar as much with that.
I could see sexual 2 for you from like what we discussed and everything.
Yeah.
But yeah, like in Cameron, or for any of those who don't know, like so Enneagram, y'all can check out my video on that, like the instinctual variance, that social, sexual, self-preservation thing. Every Enneagram type has 3. Every Enneagram type has 3 versions of it, and the one that you relate to most, and then you have the one that you relate to the second, and then the one that you're repressing. And me and Jamila, we've discussed yours a lot, Cameron. So that's how we know like your Enneagram 7, social 7 for sure, and then self-preservation second. And yes, despite you wanting to have sex, which we hope, your repressed one is.
Yeah. Talk about that.
Oh man, how are your platonic and romantic relationships with women? Kind of already touched on that, but I want to hear from
y'all. I guess I'll go first, right? That's a good question. Wow, I feel like over the years it's really changed a lot for myself personally, especially since like kind of just, I guess the way I grew up and like what I've kind of evolved to from the past couple of years has a lot to do with that too. Like I grew up a Jehovah's Witness, which is like a religion type of thing. So like my perspective on like relationships and dating and stuff was a little bit more, I guess you could say, narrow. You know what I'm saying? Like we was kind of taught like, you know what I'm saying, you don't have sex till marriage, you date to marry. So kind of coming out of that environment, since I'm no longer in that religion anymore, I've kind of like been able to develop my own, I guess, ideas and how I look at, relationships and stuff. And I would say like growing up, I always had like pretty easy platonic relationships with women. Like I always got along with men and women really easily. But like with women, it was always easy for me to like be friends and be platonic. But like the dating aspect, I kind of struggle with in some aspects, because it's like dating and friendships is like similar but different. Like dating is like a tier higher, you know what I'm saying? And I feel like I kind of struggle with kind of making that difference, kind of knowing how to differentiate, because I've always been like a good friend, kind of like how you say, like I was able to like help people, give people advice, stuff like that. So it's like kind of wanting to shift from that, like say I like somebody, and shifting it from the friendship to the, okay, I want to date you type of thing, without being too friendly. Like that was kind of one of my things that I had to like, I won't say eliminate, but I kind of had to learn how to differentiate it. Like, okay, like let me learn how to like set better boundaries or like make my intentions known. So I would say like now, I would say my dating, like, it's a lot better. I think I'm getting more intentional, like with what I want out of certain relationships. I think I've kind of been in certain ones that showed me what I liked, showed me what I didn't like. And I would say like going forward, you know what I'm saying? I think I have a clear picture. And I kind of realized too that I think the way society looks at like platonic relationships, it kind of gives it like a negative connotation because it's more so, especially for men, it's like you either got to be like dating women and having sex with them or like that's it. Like there is no like other type of connection. And I feel like for me, it always came natural to kind of just be cool with women because you can learn a lot from women. Like it's crazy how much I learned from women and just like, you know what I'm saying, how much insight you can gain because it kind of help you when you're dealing with women dating and stuff like that because you know how they operate. At least that's how I think. But that's kind of like, I guess you could say my take, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, it's getting better. I feel like I'm still a work in progress, you know, trying to figure out what I like, but I would say it's been pretty solid so far.
All right. So a lot of what Lonnie said actually, especially about the differentiating thing, and as I got older, because obviously still I'm only 20, but what do you call it? Just over the years, I've definitely realized a lot more that I've also eventually, especially as of recent, come to the better understanding of figuring out how to set boundaries in between the two because that's one thing, like catching a female's eye or whatever is kind of something that like I'm not trying to say anything here, but like ever since I was like in first grade, like my mom she will like always say this like, oh yeah, I remember whenever you first walked in your first grade classroom, the teacher told me that all the girls' eyes lit up and whatever, and I'm just like, okay, I mean I don't remember that, but whatever. But anyways, since like from a younger age, I've always been like a lot better at not manipulating the people, but manipulating my behavior in a way that would cause a specific outcome. Like as time would go on, at times in the past, I've like, once I get acclimated with someone and really like get to know them better, like if I really feel like I want to start shifting things towards that way, I've been really good at like doing exactly what I need to do to achieve that, and I've been really good at that. So much too as like just all 3 relationships back to back, all being 2 years from like 7th or 8th grade, and but because of, like I said, that me understanding how my ability to be able to do that, that's where it really caused the issue of me not knowing when to or when not to, like how much to talk to some people, like not even just how to talk to them, but like you can be friendly, but sometimes you don't have to be like express like being friendly like to people all the time that are female if like you have a girlfriend or if you're just not trying to make someone see you as anything other than a friend. But yeah, as time's gone on, I've gotten a lot better at like looking at my own behavior and how it affects that, so that I can have good platonic relationships. Because all the platonic relationships I have are like really, really, really good if the other person is as genuine as I am with it, and they're also not like thinking something in the back of the head like they're trying to get to me or something like that. But yeah, it's not like I've been better at connecting with females my entire life, but like I've always, from like a young age, I've been more around boys and just guys, and like I would maybe only have like one friend that was a girl, maybe, because like I think at the time when I was really little, I was like kind of scared to talk to girls or something. But when I started becoming friends with them, I realized how much easier it was to be able to like become more than just like, not more than just friends, but more than just like people that you see occasionally, but people that you can really connect to and talk to about deeper things and have like meaningful connections with them. Because sometimes guys have been really hard-headed in talking about emotions and stuff and kind of just try and keep it at as short as they can in a conversation. But yeah, I've always had a really good ability to have very good platonic relationships. But yeah, as of recent, I've gotten better at drawing a line between the two.
Salvador, yeah, you definitely sound like a sexual 2 Enneagram to me.
It's a bit of a challenge for me to address specifically the question of like platonic relationships with women, because I can only speak to like expectations placed on men and women in our society. Like, I haven't noticed any generalizations about each gender that actually hold true in like even the majority of cases, unless you're talking about a specific subculture. Like, there's specific personality traits you expect among, like, let's say high school football players, and even then, you know, plenty of them will subvert the expectation. I would say that being an ENFJ has made it easier to connect with and interact with and have casual fun with all kinds of people. And that has given me more opportunities to interact with people to an extent that leads to me finding people who vibe with me really well and who I connect with on a deep friendship level. So that's been easier. I would say it's changed as I've gotten older, because in high school there was more expectations for how men would act and how women were supposed to act. And I often found that it was rare to find as many guys who wanted to like sit and have an emotional conversation rather than, you know, go ride bikes around the neighborhood or toss a football or something. But that became less and less pronounced as a difference as I got older. And I would say that the other main thing that being an ENFJ has contributed to my relationships in that way is an ability to differentiate between different kinds of loves and different kinds of affections. Like, this makes it easier for me to define and experience relationships organically rather than having them try to fit into a specific category. Like, I mean, the Greek words for love are a good starting place, where you have like agape and eros and phileo and ludus, and you know, there's lots of different kinds of love and lots of different ways that those kinds of affection can play different roles in different relationships. So to be able to sort of customize the way I see each relationship has enabled me to more accurately match like the nuances that you'll find in each relationship, because each one is different.
It's so wild hearing you guys talk about it. I feel like I relate to each of y'all's experience, but just in like a different way. Like Lonnie, I grew up super conservative. I grew up in a independent Baptist household, which is basically like ultra conservative Baptist. I mean, the women didn't wear makeup, go to the movies, no pants, and I mean, it's just that kind of thing. And so I did have a very rigid understanding of what relationships between an unmarried man and an unmarried woman are supposed to look like. I mean, you know, you don't smoke, you don't dance, you don't chew, and you don't date girls that do. Like, that was kind of the mantra, right? Like, it was very, very separate. But like you, Salvador, like I just was much, I don't want to say more comfortable, but it was just easy to be friends with women. It was easy to talk to. They weren't as judgmental when you went sort of into your sort of emotional or less analytical side. And so I kind of gravitated towards that. But as far as romantically, I just kind of avoided it at all costs, because I was a good Christian boy. You know, I didn't want to dive into that. My dad's a pastor, my grandfather's a pastor, my uncle's a pastor. I got a couple aunts that pastors too, and I just didn't want to. I don't know. I didn't want to rag on the family name. So I really avoided that until I got to college altogether. But I think once I got a little bit of distance and got to school and kind of sort of became my own person, then it just became a lot easier. The more romantic side, right? I figured out, and this was also another DZ, and his now wife, Jamila's noticing that I'm a flirty person by nature. And I never really considered myself that because I never dated. Like my first kiss was in college. Like, so I just never considered myself a flirt. But even in my male on male relationships, it was quote unquote flirty. Flirty meaning like instigating or like trying to push somebody, see what they're gonna do, or like, just being competitive. Just that sort of, I want to see how you're gonna react. And so you kind of get that like that repartee between two people. And so like I recognize, like when I was on the team, I was always the trash talker, right? When I was when I was with my boys, I'm always the one that's gonna say something. I'm gonna speak up. I'm gonna call, right? And it wasn't necessarily because I was angry or because I had to say it or felt the need to, but because it was fun. And so I think that sort of translated. Like I said, once I got to college and kind of expanded sort of my self autonomy. Just talking to girls and like realizing that I could get girls to like me if I wanted them to. Not like it wasn't God or anything, but it's like, I could figure out how to talk to a girl and pick up whether or not, they was picking up what I was dropping. And if I saw the end, I can make it happen. So yeah. And that's also been super dangerous too. I've had to establish some pretty clear-cut boundaries with my relationships now because, unlike Emrys, I don't feel that I'm very in touch with my emotions at all. I think I'm very good at reading other people's. I think I can feel the vibe in the room. I know how to walk. I know how to operate. But there's a lot of times where I'm feeling something and I don't really exactly know what I'm feeling. I just know it's either good or bad. And if it's bad, I don't want to feel it anymore. And if it's good, I'll do whatever I can to keep feeling that way. But I don't break down the emotions very well at all. Yeah, I guess that's the 7 in me, huh? But yeah, I'm good. I'm good with girls platonically and romantically, I guess.
That was actually one of the things I was about to throw at y'all, because like when we went through the first round of the questions, and we were talking about like, yeah, like I was a man that was like in tune with my feelings and stuff like that. I think that like that to me, I resonate like more with like how Cam is like, the stereotypical FE user, like FJs, they're usually way more aware of other people's emotions than they are of their own emotions. And it's not to say they never are aware of their own emotions, but that's just like sometimes like the case. But for those who are like, so bringing Enneagram back into it, it's like for those who are like especially in the heart triad, so that's the Enneagram 2, the Enneagram 3, and the Enneagram 4, they would be, especially in Enneagram 4, ENFJ, like they, which is very uncommon, but they exist. They would be more in tune with their emotions than like any other ENFJ possibly would be. And then the 2s and the 3s would also be too, which Lonnie, Emrys, and Salvador both are all 3s and 2. So that would make sense that me and Cameron are like the 7 and the 9, that we either, like in Cameron's case, like we run away from like dark emotions, or in my case, like we just numb ourselves to like all types of like desire and stuff like that might like produce like conflict. So I think that's like interesting. But even to an extent, still like just being an FE user, like all of us here, to an extent, we are not as tapped into our emotions as much. And so therefore, like that's why it's so easy for us to like go above and beyond for like other people. And we often have to talk out our emotions in order to like understand like, oh, this is, I guess, how I'm feeling. So there's that. But I think that for me, like a big thing that I learned, which is kind of like what Emrys was bringing up, like, so I relate to all of y'all too. And I talk about this on my channel. So like people are probably already going to be like, understanding this, but the Greek loves, that was big for me, because I always knew, and I think this is a superpower of FENI, so like NFJs, being able to see the nuances of interpersonal dynamics. And so because I was able to see the nuances of interpersonal dynamics, like, hold up, this is a familial relationship. Okay, this is a philia relationship. Okay, this is like ludus, like, and I think that ludus is a big thing for NFJs, because like, well, ENFJs especially, because ludus is the Greek love where, you know, just like what Cameron was saying, like to the Greeks, like, so there's 8 different forms of love. And just like what Cameron was saying, like ludus is the most flirtatious. And it could be anything from going to dance with somebody on the dance floor and all of that, to even drinking with your buddies and bagging on them. And it's like, what? You consider that flirting? You know, like, but that's the thing. Like, that's what the Greeks considered that to be like a form of like flirting. And it's like, yo, well, when you think about it this way, then that's a big deal. You know what I'm saying? So I feel like that was something that like really became like evident and apparent to me, because I realized that like when I started noticing like, oh, there's erotic energy, and there's platonic relationships, and there's romantic relationships, and erotic does not automatically mean romantic, because then a lot of people who sleep with prostitutes and stuff, they're in trouble, you know? But erotic can be laced around romantic. It should be laced with romantic. And erotic can also be laced around platonic. That doesn't mean that, quote unquote, it should, you know, especially as if you're a Christian, and like definitely like that's going against like biblical terms. Like if we're going outside of like a biblical lens, like that's why we have people who say like, no, we're just friends with benefits. Like we know like, no, we're not romantically interacting. We're not romantically interested in each other. We know better, but we are friends enough to where it's like, hey, like we can get off with each other or something like that. So that being said, bring it to me. I already explained like my relationship with women in the past and everything like that. But now I also, you know, like I would say like over time, I grew to learn more about these Greek loves, and not only identifying it in other people, but then especially being like a married man now, like that's helped me a lot. Like, oh, I'm not having crushes on all of these women. I just have like a very strong to connect, you know, deeply with everyone. And when you're secure in yourself too, when you're secure in your masculinity, like I was talking about how when I was younger, I would try to connect deeply with other men. It wasn't anything romantic. It was just like, yo, I just like deep connections. And they were insecure of their masculinity or their sexuality. So they're like, yo, like, I don't want to go there because that, what if you catch feelings? I don't know, you know, but like, to me, it's like, no, I know I'm straight. So it's like, if I'm quote unquote flirting with Emrys, like, which we were like in our recent video, it hasn't dropped yet. Well, it may have dropped, you know, by the time this video drops, but yeah, like that, I have like security there to know like, yo, this is just games. And like when it comes to like also like with women who can play that game too, and we know like, oh, this is just playful fun, this is a playful way to interact, and we know that it's not supposed to be leading to romance. I had a lot of like flirtatious moments. And then even with Cameron, like, yeah, we were always saying like Cameron, like he was definitely like a flirt and everything like that, but he would do it like unbeknownst, like he really did not know, like he was unaware that's what he was doing, because Cameron was just, I think that as most ENFJ are, just naturally charming. And because he was like so kind and it was genuine, like people, I think that a lot of men, when you see men in movies and stuff like that, like the perfect guy, it's interesting that they try to emulate us. Like, I don't know if y'all noticed that, but it's when you see like that perfect caricature, like of the Prince Charming, like, you know, like they try to emulate an ENFJ male, like the guy who's gonna wait and watch and make sure that you walked into your door, like walked home when they drop you off, or the guy that's like, you know, very in tune with your emotions and can help you. The guy who's like kind of like alpha, not in the stereotypical sense, but that he's able to talk to his other guy friends, and he's like the one that kind of like stands out in this way, the one that's insightful, all of that, the good guy, the nice guy. Like these are like very like ENFJ kind of tropes. And I noticed that, you know, art imitates real life, you know, and so I saw a lot of times, like a lot of guys, they would look like the stereotypical ENFJ to be able to charm to charm women into liking them. And the next thing you know, they're like they switch up, their true selves come out. And then it's like, it's just interesting how they like use these techniques to draw women in. Whereas like for people like us, it's like, no, we just are just naturally like this. But then that could also cause women to look at us with the side eye. It's like, are you really naturally like this? Or are you just playing the nice guy so that you can get into my pants later and stuff like that? And so with me, like learning that these are like how like a lot of people like acted, but also just how I naturally am, and there's different types of way like dynamics and stuff like that. That really helped me a lot to be able to distinguish like, oh, I don't have romantic feelings for these people. I just have like there's a depth of intimacy that I like to have with all people. So yeah.
I was gonna add to that too. Like that takes
Yeah.
a very high level of like emotional intelligence. You know what I'm saying? To have that awareness, because even the way you just broke down like the flirting thing, like I never thought about it like that until you said that. Like you just really unlocked something in my head. I was like, what do you mean like he's flirtatious? But I was like, I guess I never heard nobody explain it like that. So I was like, that's interesting. But kind of going back to what you were saying about like art imitating life, like that's a very valid point. Like it's crazy how like I kind of feel like I've dealt with that in a lot of ways. Like I felt like it's almost like people don't believe that I'm real. Like people be like, damn, like you really exist? Like people like you exist? I'll be like, yeah, like this is who I am. Like
you see how everybody's head started nodding?
Yeah.
As soon as you said that, everybody's head went.
Yeah, I'll agree.
We're the most uncommon like, male type.
Yeah, but it's just
for
like,
a reason.
People don't. I guess it is rare. Like people don't come across, I guess, men like us a lot. So it's like kind of takes people back a little bit, or takes them time to kind of get adjusted. You know, I feel like people have kind of been skeptical of me in ways, or like almost, and I kind of feel like I kind of internalized that, feeling like I had to like prove myself. Like I gotta prove that, like, okay, I'm actually this person that I say I am, you know. But everything, I just wanted to add on to what you were saying. Like everything that you said was interesting, and you taught me something new.
I wholeheartedly agree with this. Like it's basically a skill that you develop in getting in touch with your own emotions and understanding what other people are feeling and negotiating and communicating about that very clearly and openly. Like Cam was describing earlier, and Denzel not being super easily in touch with our own feelings. For me, I've only been able to get in touch with my own feelings through like externalizing them through almost constant discussion with people who I trust and who know me really well, and through like meditative and contemplative practices where you're like just paying very close attention to what you're feeling. And I would definitely say that skill is way higher now than it was in like high school or in university. So, I mean, for people who are hearing what we're saying, the ways in which we're describing interacting differ from like the standardly accepted ones because they're coming from a place of like being extremely intentional and extremely sensitive to emotional nuances. For a lot of people, it might be necessary for them to be like, okay, here are the very strong and clear boundaries in like my platonic relationships and my romantic relationships, and I do not cross these things. Like I remember a comedian talking about having a conversation with himself about like if he ever thinks someone is coming onto him in a bar, he's just going to be like, I don't cheat on my wife. And even if she's not doing that, that he's just going to be like, I'm just drawing a hard line. And I think that it's something you have to kind of decide for yourself. Like, how are you going to approach the nuances of relationships and of emotional intimacy? Because you are the only one who can tell, oh, this is risky for me to be doing this level of emotional intimacy with this person versus, oh, this isn't a risk at all. And I think that for me, that was a pretty revolutionary discovery because I was told, like in the evangelical subculture that I grew up in, that your desires are always dangerous, your emotions are always dangerous. Like you can't trust yourself, you can't control yourself. Like, you gotta like do everything external to control yourself. It was all about like, don't put yourself in this situation. Don't go to this level of intimacy with a person. There was very little emphasis on like getting to know yourself individually and controlling yourself internally. But I understand why. I think like it's just a challenge to develop that skill. But it's definitely possible for I think anyone to do it.
Yeah, I think that it's
Yeah,
real.
I definitely hear that. My bad, DZ.
No, you're
No,
straight.
I was
You're
just
straight.
gonna
Go
say
ahead,
I really hear that, and it seems to me like the more growth that I've experienced has been because I've found friends who I trust, who I can ask about those emotional questions about myself. Like those are the times where I feel like I've understood myself more, is when I've had other people kind of explain me to me. Just, I don't know. That's probably not. I don't know if that's healthy or not, but I feel like it is. So yeah.
No, I think that is. That's exactly what I was going to say right before you cut in. I was going to say, like, I think that's the best way for us to be able to learn our own emotional terrain. Like, Emrys, like, really hit the unlock right there. It's like, talk to more people about it. Like, me, I have an FI does, like, they're really good at like understanding their emotions and stuff like that. So me, I'll talk to her and then she's like, yeah, Denzel, like, because the same way that as us as FE dominants, we're so good at being able to navigate and understand the way that people interact is the same way that FI dominants are able to navigate and explain like the internal world of emotions. And so me being married to one, like that was like really good for me because now she just I'll feel a certain way or I'll like say something, I'll talk with her, and then she's like, yeah, you're actually feeling this way because boom, boom, boom. And then now I start like catching the patterns of that. So that's helped me a lot to be able to like understand like, oh shoot.
Actually, yeah, that's like almost exactly what I was gonna say about what Cam said about not necessarily needing anyone else to like tell me like what I am feeling, but like more specifically with my mom. My mom's an INFP, and she's really really good at figuring out, like, she knows her emotions like better than anyone I know, pretty much. And I think that's probably where my NI has come in, to draw the line in between why I'm feeling, because like it's not like I don't know what I'm feeling, but like it's like I can't sometimes quite put my finger on it because like if someone else is involved or something, I'm just like subconsciously considering what they're feeling or what they might be feeling that's occupying what I know that I feel. And I feel like me explaining that to someone, like specifically my mom, and her like repeating that to me in the way that she understood how she might feel about it, or would ask questions to me, it would slowly get me to the point where not that like she's telling me what I'm feeling, but she's like saying things that suggest what I might feel. And then I'm able to draw the line in between the two. Okay, this is why I feel this way about a certain thing, and this is why I'm acting this way. But yeah, it's not so much as like I have to have someone tell me what I'm feeling, but like if I'm able to get a feel for like, am I really, feeling this way, or is it just like, but yeah.
Yo, so when you were saying that, I kind of had a eureka moment. I wonder if that's part of the reason why, at least myself, I don't know about y'all, were, well, the ones who said this were so much more compelled to have female platonic relationships coming up, because generally speaking, they're more emotional. And even if they're not more emotional, they're more emotionally aware, able to, y'all ever heard that book, Men Are Like Waffles, Women Are Like Spaghetti? And it's how, like, men are able to sort of put these boxes and compartmentalize a lot better, generally speaking, and women are able to make these somewhat estranged connections. And maybe that's why I was so much more drawn to being around women, because they were able to sort of make connections for me that I wasn't necessarily able to make. I don't know. I think that's pretty interesting. I never thought of that.
I think that's spot on. That's spot on. Yeah, but I think that also we were able to help them too. But yeah. So it was a good.
Yeah.
It was a good. I was gonna make a joke, but I don't know if it was a good reciprocal dynamic.
Now you got to do it. Now you got to do it.
I think 69 dynamics are the best ones. That's what I'll say.
All right, y'all. Appreciate y'all.
All right, bro. Catch you later.
He's trolling Lonnie. He was just kidding.
Oh,
I thought he was for real too. I was like, see, bro.
I know. He was for real.
Come on, y'all. Come on, y'all.
I was listening to I was like, pretty smart. I like hearing him talk. I wanted to add something to like what Cam and Salvador said. I think it's interesting when you brought up that your mom is an INFP, because I think this is something I kind of been I guess you could say brewing on for like a year or two, and I think the type of parents that you have heavily influence like how you deal with a lot of stuff. And I feel like for me, I think my experience as an ENFJ is probably a lot different than a lot of people, because I didn't have intuitive parents. Like, I'm convinced like both of my parents are sensors. I think I'm like 99% sure my mom was an ESFJ, and I think my pops was probably an ISTJ or maybe ISTP. I'm like caught between the two. So it's funny when you said that your mom's an INFP, because I was like, wow, like that's interesting. Like how you have somebody in your life where you feel like you could like talk to about your emotions. Not saying that I didn't, but it kind of felt like, even at least with my mom, like she was more extroverted like me. So everything was more outward focused a lot of the times. So like we would have those conversations sometimes, where it would definitely kind of go a little more deeper. But sometimes I just feel confused, because I'm like, man, like I can't really explain myself to y'all, because y'all don't think y'all really get it from a more intuitive place. You know what I'm saying? And I feel like sometimes they were just more so focused on the surface level dynamics. And I feel like that with men too, a lot of the times. They're so like, not all of them, but like a lot of men can be like really dense and just like kind of stick to the surface. Like, I'm trying to go deeper into like understanding the why. Because I feel like with my emotions, I'm not super heavily emotional, but I'm not super super logical. Like, I think I'm kind of in that middle place. And I feel like when I'm feeling something really heavy, I try to like understand it, like get to the root of the why. Like, okay, so why am I feeling like this? Why do I feel sad today? Or why do I feel unmotivated to go do whatever on my to-do list or whatever? Like, I think just kind of like to bring that full circle, like I think the parents that you had growing up, like that has a big influence too on like your outlook on men and women and like emotions and all that stuff. Because if you didn't have parents that encourage that out of you, or y'all didn't have those type of conversations a lot, I think it's a little bit more of a struggle. Like you kind of have to like figure it out on your own. And I feel like for me, like I kind of had to learn how to figure out certain things on my own, because I didn't feel like I always could like open up in that way. Or at least I used to just kind of be afraid to, because I thought I was going to get judged. But that's like another thing. But I just kind of wanted to add that to like what you guys are talking about.
No, that's word. And I'm glad that we started talking about that. And we're just flowing easily, because the third question was, what is your relationship with feelings and emotion? We already just smoothly went into that. And then the fourth question was, what is your relationship with logic? Which, Lonnie, you kind of already started. So you're like, yeah, no, I'm not like really like a super, super logical person in that sense, which from that, I think you mean more like unemotional, or like, like in that sense. So so that's going to be the question that we're going into right now. Did you want to add anything else to that?
Yeah, I would say, I think as I've gotten older over the years, I appreciate logic a lot more. And people, like, I like surrounding myself with people that's like thinkers and people that know how to like be proactive and get things done and be organized. I kind of have a hard time being around, I guess, people that's not as structured, because I feel like it's funny. I feel like I kind of seen the pendulum swing in my life. Like growing up, I grew up in a very structured house, like, you know, in a very religious house. So it was very structured. So I wanted that freedom. So when I kind of got out on my own and started living on my own, I kind of had a lot of that. And then now I feel like I'm in a place where I'm like, all right, I need that structure, like, you know, like that logical, like I can't just be making a lot of impulse decisions or going off of like what other people around me want. I need to figure out, okay, what makes sense for me? What's the most logical step to do for this? Because that's, especially as like kind of bringing in my own personal life of like learning how to becoming an entrepreneur and like a business owner and stuff like that, you really have to learn how to be more practical and logical. You can't just make impulse decisions all the time. Like if you know you have to spend X amount of dollars to do this for your business, but you want to go to a concert that's going to be next week, you got to make that decision. Like, okay, I really want to go to this concert with my friends because it'll be fun, but logically I need to go save this money or invest this money in this. Like, I think as I've gotten older, I'm starting to like realize logic is actually pretty important. Because I used to kind of feel like people that were super, I guess, rational and stuff, I thought they was like really rigid and sometimes boring. I'm like, y'all always just trying to be so straight and narrow. Like, where's the fun? Like, I feel like a lot of the men I was around was kind of like that, and I didn't really vibe with that all the time. But like now as I gotten older, I appreciate that a lot more. So now I'm starting to find like the balance, incorporating the balance between the two, because it's like we each have each side within us, you know, like the left, the right brain, like, so finding the balance, I would say. But I appreciate logic a lot more, actually. I like it.
Yeah, definitely. The past couple years, I've really come to appreciate logic, and also, even though it's not technically logic, but it's based on logic structure, in my life and in a lot of things. I realized how much I appreciated it, especially when I first got into college. I was so good at structuring everything. I figured out like how good I actually am at like putting my mind to it, like how good it also feels to be able to structure something in a good, like, stable way that like when you play it out, that it works in a good fashion, and it's something that you can like not like copy and paste, but you can apply it to a lot of different things in life, like with essays or just different things in general, like making a schedule for school or for like your daily life. Like I'm doing that right now, but what do you call it? Like he said, I think your parents do play a really big role in how you grow up, whether it be about your feelings or with logic. And I think that's where I kind of, not a disconnect, but had a kind of like back and forth, and not really as much back and forth, but just I'm in the middle, and I've just been kind of in the middle, more swinging towards my feelings since a younger age. But because my mom's an INFP and my dad's an ENTJ. So my dad is very, very structured. And ever since I'm 20 years old, my youngest sibling is 17, and we still have in the bathroom, in the shower, a thing on the wall that says how to shower. It's like step 1, wet your hair. Step 2, like, I'm not even joking. And like, wow. Yeah. So like my dad is extremely, extremely structured, and especially with the 3 kids, me, my twin brother, and then my younger sister, we're all neurotypical, and as is my mom. And I'm like very ADHD, as is my twin. He's on the autistic spectrum as well. And it's just, there's not a whole lot of structure in people that are like that usually. And my mom's also extremely ADHD too. So it's caused me to like tend to be very like not like against logic, but I'm not even thinking about logic. I'm just like just thinking and doing, and that's what I've been doing since a young age. But as I started to get older, especially right after I graduated high school, I really started to realize, like when I was like started realizing, oh, I need to save my money. Like the semester's upcoming, I'm about to start college, and I need to start saving money because I'm just like spending it on random stuff all the time. And then I was like, okay, I kind of need to start thinking about things in a more practical way than just going with life as it goes and thinking ahead and stuff like that. But finding a good medium in between, I felt, is what works best for me, because sometimes I have a tendency to jump and do one or the other, and I can be so like structured or logical that I'm doing it too much, and it's like setting me back from the actual point of what I'm trying to get done, or like if I'm trying to problem solve or whatever, if I'm looking too deep, too much into it, trying to think too hard about it, it can set me back. But finding a good middle ground and just being able to use logic, especially in even in like problem scenarios, like with social dynamics, like if someone comes up to me, oh, this person said this, but I think whatever, blah, 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 blah. You can still apply logic to that in order to figure out the fastest, like, what's the word, conclusion to it at times. Like with, even when emotion is involved, you can still use logic. Okay, so if this person said this to the other person and this person had this reaction, why would they have that reaction? And it's like, okay, well, this other person did something that makes them not like this reaction. Okay, there's the problem solved. Like, you can apply it to a lot of different things, and it's just generally really helpful to use when you tend to be a person that kind of goes with the flow or doesn't think logically all the time in every aspect of their life. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
I see logic as an attempt to map reality or map experience. So it works really well if you use it as a map, and really badly if you use it as the territory itself. So basically, logic can tell you, like a map, where to go, where to look for different things, what patterns are going to show up in the actual environment. And that works really well if you're trying to get somewhere specific, like you're trying to start or maintain a business, or you're trying to understand what's going on in a complex situation like a social interaction. It kind of gives you a flow chart or a map of what might be happening. But then the whole point of a map is for you to look at the map for as long as you need to know where to go, and then go in that direction and pay attention to what's around you while you're traveling and when you get there. And I think the biggest, I think there are two major problems we can run into with the use of logic. One is never looking away from the map and never actually experiencing reality directly, which is far, far more complex than the map. And the whole point of the map is to get you into the experience. And then secondly, assuming you can map things that are more complex than you can put down on paper. So like social situations, it's really great to map it to try and navigate them. It's often a very bad idea to take something like MBTI and assume that that's an entire map of the person, right? Or to put people in categories and then assume that they fit that category completely. The other relationship with logic I would say I've had is that attempt to find safety in it, in assuming that if I had a logical system that everything in reality fit into, therefore I would be, I guess it really was an attempt for safety. I just felt like that was what I needed to do, and a lot of it was feeling like I couldn't just step into the maelstrom of reality and navigate it in person. I had to just stay in the map. And there are some logical principles that are going to be able to be universally applied. Like if you get into very rigorous logic classes, logic is very, very precise and very applicable broadly. But for most people, I would say logic has a lot more intuition and subjectivity in it than we like to admit. Like whether or not something makes sense to you or works as a structure for you is very subjective. So I think that's our other potential error, is assuming that, the map you're using is completely objective. But I will say, having come out of attempting to, live in the map and now working to make new maps of the reality I'm trying to experience, I would echo some of the things people said here, where if you can make a map for your day or your career path or anything like that, it frees you up to get into what's happening in the moment, because it basically takes that impulse to plan for the future or look into the future or look into the past and gets it out of your way so it's not distracting you.
Yeah, that's really good. And I've found, especially now that I'm in sort of the professional world, working with a lot of people who are on the total other side of the spectrum as far as thinking logically and just very, very much right-brained, everything in its proper position. The more that I allow myself, or the more that I force myself to sort of plan ahead, and then sort of align myself with the general meta narrative of whatever goal we're going after, it gives me that freedom to kind of, be the impulsive person that I would much rather be. But to the original question, for me, one of the things that I feel like maybe I might be a little confused on is the term like logic, because I think in my head I might be confusing like logic with methodical, and logical to me is like logical is probably synonymous with unemotional, and methodical to me sort of has this idea of planning out in advance. So like I definitely don't think that I'm methodical. I think that I'm pretty unemotional when it comes to making decisions, but that unemotional, logical side of me is definitely very impulsive. So like if I'm going down the street and I'm hungry, I'll stop at a random restaurant that I've never been to before because it's a random restaurant that I've never been to before. It's not that I'm thinking out, but what if I don't like it? What happens if I eat there and I don't like it? Am I have to go to? It's not really that. It's just I know that if I eat it and if I don't like it, it's going to be okay. Like it's not the end of the world. I don't necessarily consider that methodical, but it is unemotional. I don't know. Does that make sense?
That makes sense. Nah, I that makes a lot of sense. I'm the same way. It's like you're looking.
Yeah, like it's gonna be like it's gonna be all right. Yeah, like it's just gonna be all right. So I feel like the older I've gotten, the more honestly, the more emotional that I've gotten, because I've always been very unemotional. I've always known that everything's gonna work out. If I just keep doing the right thing, and I'm a Christian, I don't know where you guys stand on that, but like, I think that as long as I do what I know I'm supposed to be doing, it's all going to work out in the end. So there's no need to get, super hung up on anything. Like there's no reason to get pissy about it because it's going to work out. So I don't necessarily get emotional about those things. But I also think that I think them through very well either. So I don't know. That probably doesn't make sense, but I think that's authentic.
It makes sense.
Yeah, it makes sense.
It's crazy to hear other ENFJs speak. Like it's like somebody's in my head and they just saying.
Yeah, and it's interesting, even like all the answers that were here, because for me, if I'm gonna answer that question, like I'd say that a certain age came where I became like almost addicted to logic, but not in the sense of like what's methodical. I think for me, I've always been very like socially strategic. I've always been very methodical, like a long-term planner, like seeing like the dominoes of the interpersonal in a way, like if I make Cameron feel this way, he's most likely going to say this, and then that's going to probably get Lonnie to do this, and then Emrys might respond that. So I like naturally just quickly think of that, like even before I got into type. And so, but to me, that's not really like necessarily logical. In fact, if we're making it technical, I would say that's my FE and I working together with some SE in there. But then when I'm thinking of like logical, like not like the TE way of like putting things in motion, I'm thinking of like I became obsessed with like apologetics, for example. Like, okay, I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God who died who died and then he resurrected on the third day, whatever. And so therefore, I'm also like, because I believe this, I don't want to just have like blind faith, like some people that I know who just like, no, this is just how I grew up. I want to look at as many facts as possible. And if I find that I'm wrong, then I'm gonna be like, thank you for giving me the right answer. I'm tossing that and I'm keeping this. And so now, like, as I've continued to grow, I've continued to look more at like logical deductions and stuff. And like what's and even then like having to look at like what's empirical, like what's something that's just unified reality, which I would deem as like SE, versus what is logical, like in a TI sense, introverted thinking sense, where it's like, okay, I can build like one thing about introverted thinking that I've realized is like even when they have it as like a dominant function, they can build the most convoluted structure, argument, whatever it might be, and they can make it airtight. But just because it makes airtight sense doesn't mean that it's right. And that was something that I really had to come to grips with. Like, dang. And sometimes I would even hear other people's logic, and I'm like, something's telling me it's like that's not right. But they have such a more eloquent way of like presenting it in such an airtight, like Jenga framework of some sort that like, man, I know that it's not right. Something about this structure is off, but I don't have the logical capacity to be able to pick this apart the way that I want to, which would make sense as an ENFJ inferior, like TI type of person. But as I've continued to grow, then like I've even to this day, like, you know, I've been like continuing to investigate more and more and wanting the truth to the best of my ability that I can like get to it. Like, and so kind of like even like what Cam is saying is like, I don't really care about my feelings. Like, you know, sometimes like, especially like as a, like, you know, when I was like, especially like as a Christian, then it's like people used to say things like to me that's like, yeah, I don't really believe in God, or I don't really, you know, like God because he inserts this over here, and I don't really like that, and so I don't believe in him. I'm like, well, that doesn't make logical sense because at the end of the day, I mean, I don't like what that, you know, this is a rule or whatever either. But at the end of the day, if God is real, he's real regardless of how I feel or not about his rules. And regardless of how I feel or not, he's probably still going to send my butt to hell. And so it's like, I can feel like, well, God, I don't like you and I don't believe in you because you don't approve of homosexuality as far as I know of in the Bible or whatever like that. But then it's like, well, like that doesn't make me as God like less existent or whatever. So I'd have to like come to terms with that, like, hey, truth is truth regardless of how I feel. But then continuing to search for that truth and seeing how like, okay, again, even if I make the best arguments, it doesn't mean that it's right. And even if somebody else makes the best arguments, doesn't mean that it's right. And so the best thing that I can do is just always be in a humble position where I'm learning as much as I can, gathering as many perspectives as I can from different people, which is our NI, our introverted intuition. So that's the best thing that we can do. And then finding ways to be able to like just kind of have my own framework of the world that's continuing to develop as this like conglomerate of the things that I've collected. So that's kind of how I view logic and my relationship with it. Like I said, I've always had like an apologetic study Bible where like as you flip through it, it's like, yeah, so this is how we also know that Jesus existed because in 1843 and like, well, all these little blurbs and like facts throughout, because I'm just all about like the logic in that way. But, and like, it doesn't matter how I feel about it. Like, I'm going to say the truth, or I want to accept the truth kind of thing. But then at the same time, especially as I've been realizing recently, we don't always know 100%, like there's what the absolute truth might be. And that's what's been like, interesting. Because again, everybody has their own logic. Christianity will say like, oh, we believe that Jesus is this, is that, because boom, 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 boom. Ravi Zacharias, before, you know, we found out how much of a monster that he was and everything like that. He was like one of my heroes. Like he explained Christianity in such a logical way. And then, you know, and I always preferred people to him. And I'm like, I don't know the answer to this, but I know Ravi does. So, but then who was maybe the Muslim Ravi Zacharias? Who was the, you know, like Buddhist Ravi Zacharias? You know, they all have their own logic. And it's like at the end of the day, historians, one historian's gonna say this, another historian's gonna say that. It's like, dang, I don't really know. Everybody just has their own logic, their own experiences. So at the end of the day, I just gotta come up with whatever I have and, you know, go with that. So that's what I have to say on that one.
I wanted to add to that because this is like a conversation I've had with a lot of my more intuitive friends about like just the whole idea of like what truth is, because it's interesting, like even hearing you talk about religion and how, like, you know, I grew up in religion. I wouldn't, I guess, classify myself as religious anymore, but it's interesting, and I feel like truth, at least in my opinion, truth is very subjective. Truth is very subjective to your experiences, what you've been through, how you was raised. That's why, like, I have a hard time with the absolute truths, because it's like, in my mind, it's always a matter of perspective. Because you see how you brought up, like, what's the person's name? Rabbi? Or who's like the rabbi of like Islam or like Buddhism, or like, you know, you have all these different religions, and I feel like religions and like political parties and all these different things, they're just different perspectives or interpretations of the same thing. At least to me, like, I feel like religions are just different interpretations of what we think life is supposed to mean. And then the main characters were like the main people, I guess, who were like the thought leaders. So like the Jesuses, the Buddhas, those are the people that people follow. So their story got emulated, you know? So to me, it's like, I always had a hard time, even as a kid, I always had a hard time with like these absolute truths of like, well, this is just the truth no matter what. Like, you just got to believe it or accept it. And I've always been like, but why though? Like, I always question it. I still kind of do that. I find myself doing that even more to this day, because I just feel like a lot of stuff is subjective, because it's like, if you dive deep into people's history and you dive deep into how they was raised, what their parents were, who they were around, their environment, and you realize their experience and their perspective of the world is crafted because of like what they experienced. That's why when I get into debate, I don't even like to say debates, but when I have conversations with people about like really touchy topics like religion or sexuality or politics or like, you know, a lot of other stuff, it's funny, like, just seeing how people can get so personal with it so quickly. Like, well, no, I feel this way, this is right, like, you know, people get really like, they feel it, like they get really personal with it, and I have to take a step back and be like, yo, like, it's subjective. Like, that's your experience and how you view the world, at least to me. Like, that's why I don't really try to, like, I guess, push my own logic on other people, because I want to give people that space to think for themselves. Like, I was always that kid, like, yo, like, you want to come to your own conclusions. You don't, I don't feel like we should be forced to like have to adopt a certain way. Like, I think that's the beauty. That's the beauty in like how we were created. Like, we were all different, you know. But I just wanted to add that.
No, that's word. And what I will say is, like, so I was definitely not that kid. I did assert my opinion on other people, like, especially when I became a Christian, like, you know, looking at older people.
I used to do that too, actually, a lot.
Oh yeah, you was a Jehovah's Witness. You was knocking on doors, so you can't even talk. You was worse than me. But yeah, like, for me, like, I saw it as like, okay, this is the truth, kind of like, again, like what I was raised with. And people just don't understand what the truth is. And now, even to this day, even though I'm like way less like of the type to assert my opinion on the people, because I'm like, I don't know what absolute truth is. I do still, and I think I told you this before, like my personal opinion on it. I believe that there is still an absolute truth. It's just that everybody's perception of the truth is subjective. So I can have a subjective perspective that, yo, the world is spherical, as Josh Peck would say. Whereas somebody could have a subjective perspective that the world is flat. Maybe the world really is just a cube or something. I don't know. But somebody could be right, even though they have a subjective perspective of it, but because they're right, like it's the absolute truth is there. Like the law of non-contradiction, is God real or is God not? If I believe that God is real, or if I believe that God is not, that's not going to change the fact that he's real or that he's not. There's still an absolute truth that's there, and whatever I think does not influence what happens to the absolute truth. So, but I get what you're saying, though. I think that what you're saying is like it's hard for people to be able to really know what the absolute truth is. Nobody can prove that God is real, just like nobody can prove that God is fake. And so therefore, we're just all looking at the spiritual realm and we're calling it different things based off of our experiences. And even though there is an absolute truth there, we just don't understand it. So therefore, we're saying like, yeah, so let's not push what our subjective interpretations is. The best that I can do, like, is just explain like, hey, this is just the logic that I have right now as of this time. And, I'm presenting it to you. If it makes sense to you, run with it. If it doesn't, that's cool. I'm not here to enforce my opinion because shoot, I don't know. All I know is that the more that I learn, the more that I realize that I don't really know things. And so therefore, boom, boom, boom. But I can still teach you what I've come to right now. Like Salvador, he's one of my clients. And we have Bible study, like we're going through Proverbs and everything like that. And it's like, no, do I believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God or whatever? Do I know that? Absolutely. Do I know that empirically, like over here? If we're being honest, and I've said it on my channel, probably not. Like empirically, as in like I can 100% I have the faith, and I have reason to back up that faith, but I can't say like it's empirical, like, oh, I can prove it to everybody kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I might believe what is the absolute truth, or I might just have a subjective perspective of what the absolute truth is. So that's kind of how I see it.
So one of the interesting elements that I notice in this discussion is that when we're talking about truth, we're largely talking about like what works within a certain framework or environment. Like if you're living 3,000 years ago and you walk outside and you look around and the earth looks basically flat, and you're using that idea to build a mental model of reality that helps you navigate your life, like that works well enough. If you fly to space and then try to hold on to that same model, it starts not working as well. And the interesting thing is like that seems to be the only way we can define truth in practice, like whatever is actually working when we test it in some way. Because otherwise you've just got sort of ad hoc assertions like this is true, and you just accept that. There's no way for you to test that. There's no way for you to examine that and see if it makes sense internally or in interaction with the external world. It's just true. And we know well enough that that doesn't work very well, because you can say that with anything. Like I can just blithely assert I'm a 10-foot tall platypus, and if I say you can't question that, then I can say that that's true, and that it's like revealed to me or something, and that all of you are just not seeing the truth. But if I can't test that in some way, it's not even going to work for me. So I think one of the reasons that we run into the subjectivity problem so much is that every single person brings a new environment in which to test the truth. So let's say there is objective truth. It's like, okay, well, none of us are seeing it objectively, right? Like there's no way for you to step outside your own perception. Like if you stepped outside perception entirely, you would either not see anything, or you would see everything all at once, and then there would be no way to differentiate anything. So you wouldn't see anything anyway. That's the old idea that like a void and an infinity are the same thing, because there's no lines anymore. So I think that we run into this the more we interact with people, that it's like, okay, what is working for me and the perspectives and models of reality that are working for me may not work for you at all. And when we compare our models that we think are super different, we may actually find out they're very similar and just using different language to describe very similar experiences. And then sometimes we'll run into models that seem to completely contradict or be extravagantly different from our own, and still, if we take the other person's perspective, see that it's working for that person as best they can. So I think that's where the principle of like trying to help people search out truth for themselves is really important, because they're the only ones who are going to be able to find what works for them and like test it. And it is important to challenge, you know, what you are thinking is working for you, what you are thinking is your most accurate model of reality. But if you're testing it and over and over and over, it's like standing up to the test. Like it's standing up to tests of internal consistency and standing up to tests of seeing how it interacts with the external world. But there's a part of you going, I just can't accept this because somebody told me at this time that this wasn't true. It's like, well, okay, so for what reason are you weighting the stated opinion of that person over your experience?
That's really good. I don't want to keep going down this wormhole either, because I know we get way off subject. But it's just really interesting to hear all that stuff. Emrys, I would kind of push back on you though, with what you were saying, only because I think this whole sort of subject is cyclical, right? The idea that everybody can test for themselves the subjective truth that works best for them. I mean, that's an absolute truth, right? To suggest that somebody is able to do that. I
don't know if this will change your answer, but I would say that's not necessarily absolute, because for some people they're unable to test it, or for some people they're unable to discover new models that work. So I don't know if that's like, I'm not claiming.
I would still just say those are absolutes too. I mean, the fact that some people would be able and some people wouldn't, those are absolutes in and of themselves. So it's like at some point we have to, even if it is subjective, you have to sort of establish some sort of subjective absolute that everybody agrees on in order to build. That's the only way you can have a culture. That's the only way you can have a community. That's the only way you could have dialogue. Like, I don't know. It's just, it's kind of.
This is red and white. Do we all agree?
Actually, I'm colorblind, so.
Oof. He doesn't
your term subjective absolute is a really good one.
Right. Yeah. Which is why, by the way, extroverted sensing is like so important, because extroverted sensing is Pam, for you, like, you know, Tay. So he has extroverted sensing as a dominant function. He'll look at this. If we all start being philosophical about this, he's like, boy, that's a damn like red and white cup. Like, what are you talking about? Like, that's extroverted sensing, like, at its best. Like, I'm just seeing things for what it is. Unified reality. Let's move on. Whereas like the introverted intuition is like, oh, let's peer deeper. Let's start digging this. Like, what is truth? What is all of that? And it's like, we need to have that kind of like balance of that. And then the introverted thinking is like, well, you know, if I delete this and if I do this, so yeah. But
it's kind of like what Emrys said earlier about the map, and how, like, I forgot how he explained it, but like using the map as like the tool to like get into reality or something.
Oh yeah.
He said something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's kind of the same thing with like the objective functions, like sensing and like thinking and stuff like that. They kind of help us, give us those like objective things that we know are concrete. Because like you said, we could be debating all day, like, okay, well, this is subjective, this is subjective. You can look at it from this perspective, but it's like ultimately you got to have some type of common denominator to where it's like, okay, we can all agree. Most of the population agrees the Earth is round, even though I personally don't really know 100%. Might be flat, who knows? But overall, most of us agree, okay, the Earth is probably round. They've been to space, quote unquote, they've been to space. So, you know, that's what most of us can agree.
But have they been to space? Have they been to space?
NASA could be playing us. It could be giving us.
But that's a good
like,
point.
Yeah.
I like that you brought that up, though. I like that you brought that up.
What's your thoughts on masculinity and toxic masculinity?
All right. So the first question is, what's your views on masculinity?
Yeah, like, so us being ENFJ men, like, how would you define current masculinity or toxic masculinity, and like, how would you like want to like redefine it, if you want to redefine it at all?
That's a good question. I would say, I feel like in today's society, I feel like we're kind of at a crossroads with masculinity, but at the same time, it's like you kind of seeing an extreme version. And it's funny because I've been wanting to talk about this for a while, and I want on my own podcast of just like masculinity and this whole concept of like alpha and beta and all this different stuff that we've been seeing on the internet. Like Kevin Samuels and all these different types of people. And it makes me think, because I feel like even if you want to go a step deeper, a lot of people talk about like, well, there is an attack on masculinity in the world, and how like there's an agenda to make men more feminine and stuff like that. And I feel like maybe there's some truth to that, but I feel like we're in a day and age where I think we're seeing traditional roles kind of crumble. You know what I'm saying? It's not 1942 anymore. Like, like it's a different world that we're living in. So it's like people kind of want traditional roles in things, but it's like we don't live in that world anymore. And I feel like masculinity now, like you're kind of seeing either one or two extremes. You're either seeing men feel like they have to be super like alpha and macho and super hardcore, gotta go to the gym every day, lifting weights, you know what I'm saying? You gotta be a business owner, you gotta make six plus figures, you gotta be talking to at least more than 5 women or whatever, having sex. Like, I feel like that's a more like
At least.
that's a more hedonistic, like extreme version of like what masculinity is. And I feel like you see the extremes, because then on the other end you kind of see some more men embracing their more like feminine, like I guess emotional side. And it's like, I guess it's like you're either really really feminine or you're really really super masculine. And I feel like, I guess for me, if I had to like redefine what it's supposed to be, I would say masculinity really is just being comfortable in your skin and who you are. I feel like naturally some men are kind of going to lean more to just being, I guess, a more dominant, I guess you could say alpha type of person, like just more in tune with that masculine energy. But I believe that every human has masculine and feminine energy within them. So I feel like if I had to redefine it, I would say it's more so just about being who you are naturally, and also understanding that you do have feminine energy as well. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do have emotions. Like, I don't think God would have created us with tears for no reason if he weren't meant to cry. You know what I'm saying? Like, little stuff like that. Like, we all have both sides within us. It's more so just about self-awareness and understanding, like, okay, I might not be wired like many other guys, but that doesn't make me less of a man. I don't have to put on a front and act like everybody else. Because I used to struggle with that, feeling like I had to start doing certain stuff to feel like I'll be perceived as more manly, even like specifically by women too, because even women can play into the stereotypes of like, oh, well, if you don't do this, 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 and this, then you're not a man. And I'm like, we gotta stop doing that. Like, everybody's not wired the same way. So I feel like, to me, like, masculinity is about self-awareness and really just like being your true self and acceptance. You know what I'm saying? A lot of men, I notice, they don't accept, I guess you could say, the more feminine aspect of themselves. Like, you could see it, like, and I feel like I kind of struggle with that too, like, because I think even seeing my own dad, like, I could tell like he wasn't necessarily always stronger with the emotional part to having those like tough conversations. And I feel like as men, we kind of got to like change that narrative. You know what I'm saying? Like, we don't have to act super toxic and super like overly like domineering, you know what I'm saying? Just to kind of prove like, oh yeah, I'm a man because I go to the gym and I lift weights every single day and this, and this. Like, that's not what defines you. Like, what is your character like? What is your morals like? How do you treat people? You know what I'm saying? Can you be a leader? You know what I'm saying? Do you know how to respect people? Like, those to me like are the real traits that define like, okay, that's like a real man. So I feel like that's kind of how we like could redefine and change the conversation, because we're in an interesting time in the world right now. We're kind of seeing like a lot of extremes, but I don't really think we see like a middle. We're not allowing space for the middle road. So I guess that would be like my perspective.
Yeah, I liked a lot of what you were saying on there, especially about that, like the two extremes, and some people, some men trying to be like, not even like they're intentionally, oh, I'm trying to fit in a box, but they're putting themselves in a box. Like, oh, I'm a man, so I got to do this. I got to act this way. I got to be tough. I can't cry. I can't talk about my emotions and everything like that. And with that comes a bunch of like, I think it also sometimes comes from a place of, I think Denzel mentioned it earlier about like talking to other guys about your emotions and them being like, oh, I don't want to do that. That's gonna make me look gay. Like insecurity of their masculinity causing them to like press more outwards and like to show others or whatever that they are masculine. But for the question, you said the question was, how would you define masculinity? Well, I mean, there's a lot of different ways that can be interpreted, but in my opinion, masculinity or being a man, one of the main things would probably just be sticking to yourself, like being who you are as a person at heart and in your mind, and not gravitating towards any one specific way as a result of another person like making you do so, or you trying to fit a mold of someone else. Rather, you over time like accumulate your own understanding of everything surrounding you and how you should act and how you should portray yourself in the outer world and or in a family dynamic or whatever it might be. And that you're just, you know who you are as a person yourself, and that no one else's opinion or subjective thought on that will define if you are a man or not. And it, again, for me especially, it's kind of hard to put my finger on it because masculinity can be like, it can be, the term can be understood in a lot of different ways, but it's kind of hard for me to put my finger on it other than saying that, like what masculinity would be, other than the actual like definition textbook term of having more traditional male characteristics, like being bigger or taking more of a like authoritarian, I forgot what the word was, but taking more of a like a leadership role or whatever and being in charge. But like you said, there's not as much of a middle ground. It's more people, like especially with like the times now versus what they were way back in like the 1900s, like early 1900s. It was really traditional then, but also now there's some things that are coming up that are so like opposite of traditional. It's like, where do you find the middle ground? Because like I feel like the truth is somewhere in the middle ground, and although it's not like concrete, it's just something that is still yet to be completely like spread across the people in a way, because a lot of people just see it one way or the other. They're like, oh yeah, you have to be masculine, you got to have a traditional role, you got to be like in charge of everyone and everything. And some people just don't care, and they think, oh yeah, it can be either way. And I think that it should be being understanding of both sides, and that at times you do need to play a more the bigger role in making decisions and pressing for something that doing an action for something that you believe in, or whatever it might be at mind and heart, that you are driven to do what is at your heart or morally correct or right, like what's doing the best for you and the people around you, and not just completely disregarding what other people feel or want just to get what you want. Like it's in a way doing the best for as much as you can, even though you can never please everyone. It's kind of like doing the best that you can do to do good for as many people as possible. And although everyone's not able to do that, some people are going to play roles that are bigger and have people following. You're just as much of a man being up here at the top. You just have different roles. All the people following are the people that make up everything underneath them. And without all the people that were playing the smaller roles, the bigger role would serve no purpose. So it's like you can't really just have one or the other. You have to have all of them come together for it to have any like masculinity in general at all. Like there's going to be just two ends of the spectrum, some in the middle, and understanding both sides is kind of important. But as for toxic masculinity, all I'm going to say, I think it's really stupid. And it's just, I've met tons of people that are just, it's people like that. I mean, I hate to say it because I don't mean to not take anyone serious, but if you're just going to be like super, super intentionally masculine and just like disregard anything involving feelings, disregard anything involving like a woman's opinion or whatever, just because you're the man or whatever, is like, I'm just going to roll my eyes and I'm not going to take you seriously. And I just usually leave it at that. I think it's stupid and you're trying to prove something on purpose because you, for some reason at heart, don't feel adequate enough to just like not have to prove that to everyone. But that's how I see it.
I would define masculinity and femininity for that matter, as a certain collection of social roles and expectations that humans have operated with in a variety of ways for several thousand years at least, and that we then encoded into our stories and symbols. So I think that's one of the reasons that it gets complicated to have discussions like this, because we use masculine and feminine both as ways of describing different social behaviors, but also as ways of describing like different character traits or different symbols or different ideas. So if I'm talking about the social expectations, I would say most of the social expectations associated with one or the other are basically a collection of ideas saying where you get your value from. So for men, some of them are getting your value from having a large income or being physically strong or being physically or emotionally tough, and saying like that's your identity. That's what it means to be a man. Or that's what conveys value on you. You know, you're valuable to society or to a mate or to yourself if you fit these roles or do these things. And the same can be said on the feminine aspects. On the other hand, because humans have dealt with, let's say, sexual polarity for as long as we've been human, and probably longer, like we take those ideas and project them onto our stories. So for example, you can watch Sleeping Beauty and see the prince rescuing the princess as a man rescuing a woman, or you can see it as one symbolic archetypal idea bringing out the expression of another symbolic archetypal idea. And in that world, like the masculine principle is usually defined something like that which reaches, and the feminine principle is usually defined as like that which awaits the reaching. But those are very difficult to discuss in our society because they're things that operate on the realm of emotion and intuition and abstract ideas, and our society doesn't tend to value those very highly. And because we have gotten into a habit of assigning, masculine principles are found or should be found in biological men, and feminine principles should be found in biological women. And that's not, as some of you have observed, the way it works. Like everyone has what we would symbolically call masculine and feminine principles within them. And I would say that a lot of this like ties into the toxic masculinity thing too, where it's like we've got certain messaging saying this is where you find your value or identity as a man. And then I would say much of toxic masculinity is fueled not necessarily, I mean, some of it's conditioning, some of it's like, I was raised to think this is what a man is, so I'll raise my children to think that. But for a lot of it, it's fueled by people who want to make money off of you or have power over you. Like, it's sex sells, the masculine image sells, the feminine image sells. So it's not really like a lot of our culture is influenced by that. And I would say that's particularly the case because our main interaction with artistic and symbolic and archetypal things is through like media. So, and media is often aimed at making a lot of money, or taking advantage of whatever the current social perception of masculinity and femininity is in order to make money. So it's not really a agendaless exploration of the symbolic principles. And I would say that as far as moving past like toxic masculinity and finding identity and value in masculinity and femininity in general, I would say it's really helpful to start operating in that symbolic world, to see that the things that you've thought of as masculine are largely a set of ideas or ways of being that you can step into and out of at will. And you do that by getting to know those ways of being and those symbols and stuff, and then practicing like adopting those ways of being or shedding them as you wish, so that if you need to, like, you know, let's say you need to bring a lot of masculine energy to a football game or something, or like interviewing people who are super into football or something, like you can do that. You recognize this isn't my identity. This isn't who I am any more than, you know, I'm just a teacher, or I'm just a parent, or I'm just a friend. They're all just roles I play. And then I would say that for our society, it's really going to be important for us to do that on an individual basis, or at least on a, not necessarily just individual, like we need to get better at interacting with those different roles and ideas outside of just our media or our societal expectations about them. Because when you start doing that, you get to choose how you bring those energies into your life instead of seeing them as roles that you have to fulfill in order to have value or identity.
Dang. Well, I don't know what y'all want me to say after that. I'll come at it from a different angle, because I don't think I can express that do that any better justice. For me, as a Christian, right, and this goes kind of back to our previous argument, our previous discussion, rather, of, you know, absolute truth. This is kind of where I build everything off of, and so I don't know that I necessarily have a good definition for masculinity, but I do have an explanation for how I express my masculinity. And I think that the root of that, it's protect, provide, and pursue, right? As men, given the biblical precedents all up and down the Old and New Testament, we have a responsibility to protect, to provide, and to pursue. When we show up somewhere, we leave it better than when we arrived. We make sure that we provide a healthy foundation. We make sure that we have fertile ground with which to grow the things that we chase after, and desire and create. And so I believe that's what it means to be masculine in the world. And I think the reason those three words specifically have always just held up for me is because it allows a wide range of expression within that, right? Somebody who's quote unquote more feminine can provide, he can protect, he can pursue. Somebody who grew up in the middle of the South driving a big old pickup truck, smoking cigars, can provide, protect, and pursue. You know, the same way somebody who grew up in the middle of the city, who grew up with all girls in the house, can do the same. You know what I mean? And so it really allows for a wide range of expression. As far as the toxic masculinity thing, I don't know. This might get me kicked out the group. So I just don't buy it. I don't believe in toxic masculinity. In the same way, I don't really believe in toxic femininity, which almost never comes up in discussion. I believe in toxic behaviors. I believe in reactions. But it seems like I don't know. It seems like toxic behaviors are more like a reaction to perceived threats to the masculinity of like a subset of men with low self-esteem, right? So it's like, I think a lot of men respond in toxic ways when their masculinity comes under threat of being taken away, right? If you come at your boy and say that he's weak, or you say that he's a girl, or you say that he's lazy or can't do anything, a lot of men specifically with low self-esteem or low emotional awareness will respond and attack in a toxic way. And I think that, you know, the term toxic masculinity is it's a catch-all term for anything associated with anything negative and aggressive. So anything that happens in all of society, if it comes, let alone if it comes on the behalf of a man, but if it happens in a way that is forceful and in a way that is perceived as, you know, just negative, is deemed toxic masculinity. And I disagree with that. I think you can express masculinity in a way that's harmful, in the same way you can do that with femininity, but it doesn't make the femininity or the masculinity itself toxic. C.S. Lewis, who is a famous philosopher and writer, he talked about, like, you know, sorry, I keep going back to the Christianity thing, but he talked about like sin not having an essence, right? He always talked about the fact that sin wasn't a tangible thing in and of itself, but it was the privation of good, which basically means like a cancer, right? So a cancer isn't a thing, but it's a deformed cell. It's a cancerous cell. If you look at a regular cell, it's round. If you look at a cancerous cell, it's starting to dissolve and disintegrate. And that's what he called sin. It was whenever you took something that was good and deformed it and turned it into something else. And I think that's what people are referring to when they talk about toxic masculinity. It's not the fact that masculinity of itself is toxic, but rather it's just expressing itself in a way that people with low self-esteem would demonstrate. So that's kind of my opinion on it.
Respect.
I'm really glad that you shared your opinion. Despite, I'm really glad to hear like all of us perspectives on this. Like, this is great. I don't have too much to add to any of that. If anything, I was more interested in hearing like what y'all thought, because honestly, I don't really know myself how to quote unquote redefine masculinity. So I was more intrigued to hear what y'all would think about that. But I do know that I don't want the rigid idea of masculinity to be something that's standing anymore, because then, you know, we're teaching our kids, you know, like, again, like if our son cries, like, hey, yo, you a little bitch, like stop crying. It's like that's not wholesome. You know what I mean? Like don't teach him something like that. It's like everything, even when we listen to like rap music, like again, like excuse my language, but like everything's like, oh, you little, you know, and it's just like, come on now, like really, like that's how we, like, if you're a real man doesn't do this, a real man, and it's just like, I don't really know. You know, I think, and then especially like thinking about like with women, a lot of women, I mean, shoot, single mothers, they protect, they provide, you know. So it's like we're even like with masculinity, it's like we're not saying like, oh, women can't bring this. I think that if anything, the biggest thing that I just want to harp on is the fusion of both. And I love what Emrys said too about like how this has been something that's been like kind of like placed on us from like long time ago. And I'm not against gender roles. I think that it's good to like at least have like, personally speaking, I think it's good to have like, okay, we have a baseline of what we think, and then if we want to rearrange, we can rearrange. In my household, like I live with my wife, and then I live with my roommate who's also female, and then her daughter. And shoot, I do more of the sweeping in the house. I do some of the cooking in the house too. You know, I wash the dishes, you know, like, but I'm also the one who drives all of them. I'm the only one who has the car and like license and all of that, you know, like, and yeah, like as of this moment, you know, like up until literally just when we moved to Atlanta, I was the breadwinner, and now my wife, she's making, she's landed such an amazing job, and look, she's making more bread than me. I am not complaining about that. You know, somebody might look at me, oh wow, like a real man, like, But look, like if she's winning, I'm winning. Like that's all that matters. I'm still secure. She still respects me, and we have joint bank accounts. She trusts the way that I use money, and everything that she's about to like spend or whatever. Like she even when we're like tipping the waiter or something, she asking me like, how much should we tip? Stuff like that. Like I'm not gonna lie, it makes me feel like a man. Like, this most of this is your money. But it's like I'm the one who's like paying off the bills. I'm the one who's doing this, I'm the one who's doing that. She could do all that too. But at the end of the day, it's like I think that like everything is like just like what Lonnie was saying, like it's interesting the time that we're in. And I think the biggest thing to just pretty much say is like, we shouldn't get so trapped in a way that might seem unnatural to us. Like, oh, I'm a man, so I have to work out. Oh, I'm a man, so I have to be unemotional. And which even then, again, like with what Cameron was saying, like who's to say that being unemotional is part of being a man? Like if we just keeping it to protect, provide, like stuff like that, it's like, hey, all right, cool. I think that people being shamed for certain things that we deem as like masculinity, that's the problem that I have. Whereas also when we pervert masculinity, that's when we have toxic masculinity. Like I like what you were saying, Cameron, like in allusion to what C.S. Lewis said about the cancerous cell. Like this is a cell that's pretty much been like perverted and warped, but it's still a cell. It's just, so when we look at toxic masculinity, it's still masculinity, or at least our idea of it, because masculinity, we kind of like created that role, that term, but now it's warped. Now it's coming from an insecure place. What you say? Did you just say something to my girl? Now, in order to protect my masculinity, I gotta fight you. Like this is, and if I don't, then what are my bros gonna say about my masculinity? What's my girl gonna say about my masculinity? She's gonna want to go to another man who will actually, punch a dude in the face and risk going to jail because he tapped her butt or something like that. Now I'm not saying like you just like, oh, everybody just be nice. I'm not trying to say that either, but like I think like reject what masculinity is even saying and just be you. Like think of the most rational thing and don't let other people's perceptions of like, oh, so you're not really a man or whatever. Like, it doesn't matter.
I want to add on. This is probably the last thing we say about this topic. I think the last thing I want to say about this is like a lot of it just has to do with insecurity and people being too overly concerned with other people's opinions of their lifestyle. To me, I've been there. Yeah, that's the number one thing I feel like with all of this discussion. Like, a lot of it is just people are just afraid to be their true self and are just too overly concerned with what other people are gonna think. And I see that a lot. Like for me, like I had to really like overcome that and kind of just like be me. Like, yo, like you just gotta be you. Like, not everybody's gonna get it. Not everybody's gonna accept it. Some people might think you're more this. Some people might think you're more that. But as long as you know who you are, and the people that you care about, respect and know who you are, it doesn't really matter in the grand scheme of things if you're not living up to the stereotypical standard of what being a man is supposed to be. I feel like that's the biggest thing. A lot of it comes from insecurity. The more confident you become in yourself, you don't really have to prove yourself as much. And it's funny because we think it's the other way around. We think when somebody's confident, oh, they got to prove themselves all the time. No, you don't. Like, if you're confident in your masculinity and who you are as a man, I don't need to prove to you that I am. Like, look at Prince. I just know I am. Like, I don't gotta prove it to you. Like, I know what I'm about. That's enough. But that's like the last thing I wanted to say. Yeah,
I was just gonna stop that by saying, like, I've been reading this book, Gods in Every Man. I heard about it through.
I might have to check that out.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it's real. And then I got the other book, Goddesses in Every Woman. It's talking about the anima and the animus. It's like the male archetypes in us and the female archetypes in us, like in all human beings. So like, and I listened to all of like Personality Hacker. They made a podcast series on the books, and they went into every Greek god and every Greek goddess and talking about what energy, feminine or masculine, that they each brought according to the book. So I haven't read the goddesses one yet, and I'm still like, I'm like about 3/4 of the way through this one. I'm like really studying it and highlighting it and stuff like that. It's deep stuff. And I remember when I listened to all the podcasts like some years ago, then I was embarrassed because I of course listened to all the gods and every man one, and I was like, I'm not a Zeus, and I don't really have much. I don't really have like too much Hades energy. Like it's kind of there. Okay, I have a lot of Apollo energy, but I wouldn't say it's my main one. Or I definitely have a lot of Hermes energy, but also I don't think it's my main one either. And then everything else kind of just like fell flat. No Poseidon energy, So I'm just like, dang, interesting. I started listening to the goddesses and every woman, like, whatever, podcast. And I resonated more with Aphrodite than I did with any of the Greek god archetypes. And Aphrodite was a feminine energy, a feminine archetype. So I'm like, I was embarrassed because I was like, whoa. So my strongest energy, my dominant energy is feminine. Boom, 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 and I'm like thinking about that. And I'm like, nobody's ever called me feminine. Like, I mean, I know that I'm in tune with my feminine side, but like nobody's ever called me like effeminate. Like, I don't got that walk, I don't carry myself in a certain type of way. But dang, like Aphrodite is my strongest one. Like that's a feminine archetype. But it took me a while to like adjust to that. And like even now, even saying it like, on camera, like before all of my subscribers and stuff, it's like kind of like what Lonnie's saying, like, yeah, I don't care. Like, because at the end of the day, like I'm still who I am. And if you feel like, yo, that's good, like I'm secure in who I am. And I know, like, hey, it is what it is. Like Aphrodite's my main one. I didn't really relate too much to the other goddesses, It's like Aphrodite, then we got Apollo and Hermes, then we got the Hades energy. I have some Aries energy over there too, and it's just like, okay, I'm seeing like how like these archetypes show up. But at the end of the day, like I'm still a man, period. And I don't have to worry about proving my manhood to other people. And especially my wife, she still sees me as a man, point blank, period. So whatever everybody else is thinking, like that's on them. So yeah.
Well, I'm a Capricorn, so
Don't know what that means, but me too.
Actually, wait, pause.
I know a little bit about astrology.
Capricorn. I don't know what I am. I'm just talking, bro.
I was gonna let that one go, but the only reason why I know what Cameron is because Jamila always said like Cameron has so much Aries energy because Cameron loves to just debate. He loves to stir things up. He loves to instigate stuff like that. Yeah. So he's an Aries.
Invite me back for the next podcast, the next video chat, so I can argue why I don't believe in those.
I will tune into that for sure.
Just like an Aries, I guess, huh?
Exactly. Yeah, I wasn't gonna say it, but I'm like, all right. So the last question that I'm pretty much gonna ask y'all is pretty much like a two-parter. It's gonna be the last one plus the bonus. So number 6, something you wish more people knew about you, and then right after that, add on to it the bonus. Where can the ladies find us? That's like obviously like a little bit of a joke. But I'm also like serious too. Like, so everybody's always asking me like, yo, where can we find ENFJs? Where can we find ENFJ men? Stuff like that. I have my answer, but I want to know like what y'all think. Like, yo, where can we find people like us? I'm guessing not like at party scenes, but maybe if some of y'all rock like that, Oh yeah, we know Lonnie G. Yeah. So the question is, what do you wish more people knew about you? And then lastly, where can they find you? And when I say where can they find you, lastly, drop like any social media and stuff like that you want to like promote. And then we can wrap it up with that.
I would say that's a good question. Wow, I haven't been asked that question in a long time. Wow, what I wish more people knew about me. I think one thing I think I wish people knew about me more is I'm probably a lot more. I'm a lot more, I guess, philosophical and intuitive than I think I may show all the time. I think it's funny, at least too, like with my career and like kind of how I move. I'm very like goal oriented and focused. Always on the go. Like, what I'm saying, doing my chef stuff and a lot of stuff. I'm very active. Like, I be doing a lot of stuff. So sometimes I wish people kind of knew like that's not really like who I am all the time. Like, like I'm actually very like very introspective, very inquisitive. I'm like a big nerd, low key. Like I like to just learn about stuff and like question things and have like really like deep but like really satisfying conversations with people. And I don't always want to just be active. Well, I don't want to say I don't want to always, but I'm not always like active and always like doing things and trying to achieve something. Like I actually have a really good sense of depth within me, and I feel like I guess I can kind of help with that too, like kind of showing that part of myself more instead of like not, I guess, kind of like hiding it and feeling like I don't really want people to know like I'm kind of actually this big nerd, or like I'm really like philosophical and stuff. Because people be surprised when they hear me talk about stuff. They'll be like, wow, like I didn't know you were so like introspective, or like the way you like give advice and like you talk about different stuff. Sometimes it kind of catches people off guard, because when they initially meet me, they wouldn't necessarily, I guess, think that about me. So I think that's one thing I think I wish people kind of like knew about me more. And I'm actually a lot more like spontaneous too, because it's a two-sided coin, right? It's like it's people that see my philosophical, like I guess, smart side, and then there's people that see my like very on the go, spontaneous side. So it's kind of funny when people meet me, because I'm like y'all met me in this setting, right? But you didn't really see me like in my more like traditional setting where I'm like on the go and doing stuff and very like goal focused type of person. So I guess it's like the duality, but yeah, that was like the main thing I guess I want people to know about me more. Where can people find me? You can follow me on Twitter. I don't know if you like, can you like drop our handles like in the description and stuff? Okay, perfect. Yeah. So you can find me on Twitter. I'm on Instagram, TikTok a little bit here and there, not too much. Them like really the main ones. I really use Instagram and Twitter the most though, so you can probably find me on there. But yeah, that's pretty much it.
Dang, bro, you literally just took like all the words out of my mouth. Like that's like literally all I could think about. Like pretty much everything you just said. I'll try and say something different.
That's great.
But if I say some of the same things that you say, then that's why. But like, yeah, that's something that really, really, like I want people to know. But I'm not just gonna go out and be like, oh yeah, by the way, I'm really introspective, and if you ever want to have a serious conversation with me, then tell me about it. Like, I'm not gonna go and say that to people, but at the same time, like, sometimes people don't take me seriously because, like, especially usually in the past at workplaces, like when I was a server and stuff, like every time that I wasn't like doing my job, I was like messing around or something, like making jokes, saying, I always love saying jokes that are like really stupid. Like those were always my jokes, like the ones that just make people say like, what did you just say? And, and because of that, like people, whenever I actually like they bring up a problem or something, or try to be serious or want to have like an actual in-depth conversation, I try to have it. They're like, oh, really? I didn't know you were like that, or I didn't take you seriously. It's like I wish it could be both, but very oftentimes it's like one or the other. And sometimes it's good to have people around me that I can be both, because I have a few close people that I can be both with. Like I can be introspective and like tell them about stuff that I think about, even if it doesn't pertain to me, just very like deep, like questioning, curious kind of questions and conversations that just unravel and just lead to like whoever knows where, but just like getting a genuine connection of like interest in like learning and finding out something new or coming to a new conclusion about something that you've already thought about and stuff like that is something that I really, really enjoy. But a lot of people, even people that are really like inquisitive or like even intuitive, don't really embrace, and it kind of makes it more difficult sometimes to find the actual people to do that. But I mean, I'm not going to go and tell a bunch of people that I like think about super deep stuff and stuff like that. But like usually if I can tell someone's thinking about or talking about or something that I can like weasel my way into there, like talking to people like that about stuff like that, I usually can figure my way into that space. But some people just block it out, and with those people I just don't even try. But where? Oh yeah. So where can people find me? Social media. I pretty much just use like Instagram. So you could put my Instagram in there, my handle. I'm starting. Well, I mean, I already started my fitness account. I'm doing like some kind of bodybuilding / just general weightlifting kind of stuff, not to be too masculine or anything, but yeah, it's for fitness. So if anyone cares to see some more posts, I'm going to be eventually, I started making my YouTube channel for it because I want to make a lot of informational content regarding it, specifically like not just physical fitness, but like I wanted to call it like health in mind, like health and mind, like physically and in mind, because like I want to do stuff for like both regarding like taking care of yourself physically and mentally and stuff like that. But yeah, if you want to drop a follow, I'm gonna be making a YouTube channel for that, and more to come.
So I think there are two things I wish people knew about me, and they're connected. Because I tend to be very almost constantly intellectual or philosophical in my discussions or interactions with people. I've had two reactions to that. One is thinking, oh, this person like, has a lot of things together, like they know what they're doing and what they're talking about and all that. And I would say like, I would very much like people to know that just like anybody else, I'm just doing the best I can with what I know and what I have, and like intellectual or philosophical ideas or what are perceived as like depth in people doesn't necessarily correlate to like personal development. So there's a like look past that stuff to get to like who the person is at their heart and like where they are in their development and where they're trying to go in their development. Because like the logic thing, intellectual stuff and philosophical stuff and like deep stuff, all of that is maps and not the territory of the person. The other reaction I've gotten is people basically being like, okay, like this guy's constantly in the clouds, like, constantly going way too deep in things. And I wish people knew that when I'm doing that, most of the time I'm not actually trying to like convince somebody to change their mind or to make them think about those things. Most of the time I'm like externalizing and processing my own thoughts and emotions, because with FE, I process emotions and ideas externally all the time. So even to make them feel valid, much less to explore them, I usually have to externalize them. So I would say, yeah, I wish people knew that like when I'm pontificating about something, that what I'm really doing is exploring my own emotions and thoughts and trying to move forward in my development. I just usually have to do that through the medium of intellectual and philosophical exploration. And I kind of take a long roundabout route to get to the, oh, here's a super obvious observation about myself and how I can grow. As for where people can find us and me specifically, like, if you're looking for ENFJ friends or an ENFJ partner or something, I would start with something that's general good advice for any like seeking deep connection with people, which is like getting to know and accept yourself. Because honestly, in general, you can only connect with people to the extent that you've been able to connect with yourself. to know yourself and accept yourself. Like that's the level to which you can know and accept other people where they are. So on top of that normal general advice, like for ENFJs, we're often longing for that in our close friendships and in our like romantic relationships, that kind of depth of connection. So it's going to be really important if you're wanting to enter into that kind of a relationship with an ENFJ for you to be able to meet them in that place. And you got to meet yourself in that place first. Other like for pragmatic places, go to events that are like social or like game events that relate to your hobbies, because that's where an ENFJ is going to want to be social, and they're going to have their own unique interests, and they're more likely to go out to those kinds of things. And then that's where you're probably going to meet people who are closer to your interests too. So you're not just like, I don't know, going to ENFJ speed datings or something. Although if you want to do that, like plenty of people meet their significant other through wild means. So as for where you can find me, I am like a decade behind on social media, so you can message me on Facebook if you want. Maybe I'll get an Instagram and Twitter and all that when I start making YouTube videos more regularly. But for now, if you want to talk, just message me on Facebook, and I'd be happy to listen to you or to answer any questions or to just have a conversation.
Emrys, I just want to be your friend, bro. I swear, you have an excellent way of expressing the things that you think in a way that I don't even want to say I'm thinking them, because I don't think I've thought nearly as deeply as you have. But I think that you're a solid dude, bro. You're just a solid dude. I really like you. I think the second thing that you said is the thing that I would want people to know. You know, it's like I require outward processing in order to figure something out, and that's kind of why I'm the dude that's always poking the bear. You know, trying to play devil's advocate. It's like you were saying, I'm not proselytizing, I'm pontificating. You know, it's like I'm not trying to convince you of what I believe. I'm oftentimes trying to convince myself that what I'm saying, makes sense. Even if I don't believe it myself, I want to make sure that it makes sense. And so oftentimes that requires an argument going a little bit longer than other people are willing to have. So there's that. And then the other one is probably like that I'm really trying my best to be authentic. Like, I think sometimes because I'm naturally an outgoing, not to brag, but like I'm generally a kind person, like it can come across as fake or as like I'm trying to, I don't know, woo somebody or, just come off like I'm not. And honestly, that's almost never the case. Like I'm really just trying to be me. But time and time again, I've developed friendships, and like later on in the relationship, they've come back to me and been like, bro, I just thought you were kissing my butt, or like you were just trying to show up, that kind of thing. And that's almost never it. It's like, it's almost never it. And I wish people would get that. And I don't know if there's really a way to change that. I don't know. I think for some people it just requires time. But yeah. Where can you meet other ENFJs? I don't know. I don't know that I'm really good at spotting ENFJs. I think I'm probably better at spotting sevens, because that's kind of how I think of myself more as an Enneagram 7 than I do an ENFJ. But the ENFJs that I know, like Emrys said, tend to be super sociable, and they also tend to be conversationalists. And they tend to be a little bit more on the eclectic side. So they're able to kind of pull from different sources. They're attracted to different, outcomes in the same area type of thing. So like go to a social event where there's a lot of things happening, and look for the dude or the dudette who's going to every stall. Like look for the person who's at the carnival and is going to play every single game. Right? They're not the ones that are sitting, throwing the hoop, throwing the ring on the bottle the whole time. Now they're going around to every different stall. Those are the types of people that I associate with, and like that I consider myself. And I think maybe you guys would feel the same. Where you can find me, I'm on the gram, I'm on the talk, I'm on Facebook. You can find me at I am Cam Wow, IAMCAMWOW. I am Cam Wow. on all platforms. Hit a brother up.
Hey, Cam is so charismatic.
Yo, y'all have
bring
no
that
idea.
energy, like.
For me, I think that it could all be wrapped up in, I wish that more people knew about me, how intentional I am. Like, I am super intentional. I'm super meticulous. I'm super thoughtful. You know, I cannot stand when people are like, bro, that person can't sing. Oh, hey, yo, you did a great job singing up there. You know, I cannot stand that. Yo, I do not think this person's, yo, you look so good. I'm not that type of person. I know I hand out compliments a lot, but I intentionally, like, I'm extremely intentional with the way that I choose my words. I'm extremely intentional with who I hand my compliments out to, in the way that I give my compliments out and everything like that. And when people cheapen that, when they cheapen my words in a way, when they cheapen, like, and they, like, kind of like what Cameron's saying, like, bro, I just thought that you was, I just think that you're so fake. It's like, what? And when they think I'm like being facetious when I'm really not, that stuff like really gets me. When they misread my intentions, and it's like, man, like, you up to something. I see right through you kind of thing. It's like, what? Like, it's kind of like what we were saying like earlier. Like, dang, it's like people don't believe that we are like real people. Like, nah, we know your type, because I've noticed, in my opinion, I've noticed a lot of other types of men and people in general try to imitate how we are, because I mean, I'm going to be real, being an ENFJ and being an ENFJ man, it comes with a lot of perks. There's a lot of perks with it. And other people have noticed that acting like that, they can get a whole bunch of perks. Like, shoot, Ted Bundy, he was number one, a psychopath and murderer and all of that, you know, for sure. But I personally also believe that he was an ENFJ. Same with Jim Jones, you know, the Kool-Aid cult leader dude. They were all like pretty charismatic. They were all like really intelligent, and they used those abilities to be able to draw people in, and they were up to stuff, you know. But that's not like, those are very different dudes, you know. Not, and even if we're like going with like a most recent example, like Hans from Frozen, you know, like again, like that's a very different type of, like, you know, ENFJ type of dude, you know, like there are like those bad types, but for me, like, my intentions are not like that. So I wish that more people like would know that about me, and pretty much know that about like more ENFJs. Like, nah, that dude is not being fake. That dude is really happy for you, and he's being real with you, and like, he's just giving you a compliment. I bet if another dude walked past, if he's secure in his masculinity, he'd give that dude a compliment too. He's not really trying to actually like get in bed with you, you know. Now, of course, we talked about the flirting thing, but that, even in that self, like, that's a different type of thing. So yeah, I think that's the biggest thing for me. Like, I wish that people knew like how intentional I am, and how much thought I put into things. Secondly, where I think that you can find us, for me, I think that you can find us in like book clubs, like stuff where it's like we can, like, we're reading, and yeah, you know, like, and we have like a group of people, and we're connecting, and it's giving us an excuse to be like, hey, what do you think about this? What do you think? Oh, what do I think? Like, Bible studies. Me and Cam used to have a Bible study, and bro, our Bible studies were lit, Cam. Like,
Lit, bro. Lit.
Like, it was like we were like discussing how like Jesus was like, yo, like, this man is a fanatic. Like, he'd be like, oh my gosh, Phil, we got like 500 people following us. How are we gonna feed them? And Phil's like, oh shoot, well, how are we gonna feed them? Jesus like, I'm just kidding. Watch this. It's like, bro, like, this dude is a show off. Or like, you know, we would like make jokes and stuff, but then we'd get like really deep and rich insight that we could share. And I think that we love doing that because we're connecting with, like, we're reading, all of us are reading the same book, SE, like Unified Reality, but then we're all extrapolating like different insights. And nobody has like a wrong answer. We're just sharing our perspectives, and then we're accumulating and building a more grandiose perspective that we can now walk through the world with. So I think that book clubs, like anything that allows us to be able to like discuss the things that we've been learning, I think that's a really, you know, that's a really cool thing for us to be able to like, for that's a really cool place for like people to be able to like find us. If you're at a party, like, we'll go and we'll dance and stuff for a little bit and have some fun, and then because of our tertiary SE, unless if maybe you're like a 7 like Cameron. Although Cameron, we used to make fun of him because this man always was falling asleep because he would party and then he's not. And you're like, no, I'm ready to go. And his catchphrase was, yo, what we about to do? And it's like, bro, we about to go to sleep. It's 12. you was asleep 2 hours ago.
Bro, I'm about to be asleep right now.
I know, right? Yeah, and I really appreciate. I'm gonna thank y'all after this. So, but yeah, I think that if we're at a party, you'll see us dance for a little bit because we do like to have fun and all of that. But I think that most of that time you're gonna find us trying to find like a quiet spot where we can like engage with someone or like a small group of people. We're looking for intimacy. We are extroverted for sure. But at the end of the day, like FE is not just about like Oprah Winfrey type of whatever. It's about like that depth of connection. Like we're trying to like have it like conversation and then being intuitive on top of that. It's like a philosophical discussion, like what you just heard for almost the past 3 hours. Like this is what gives us, like this is what gives us life in a way. So I think that if you're looking for us, then you can find us in environments like that. And last but not least, gentlemen, I just wanted to say thank y'all so very much for this video. It was well anticipated. And I'm glad, I paid for StreamYard just so I can like host y'all on this, and I'm really glad because again, like I know each of y'all personally, and I'm just really grateful, and we've been talking for like mad long, and I was looking at the clock and everything, but I do really believe that this is going to be a video that, when I post it, it's going to help a lot of people out. And I'm going to be cutting it up too. So the different questions that we've had, like putting them up in like an individual stuff. So that way, if people just want to see where can they find ENFJs, all right, here's like a 10-minute video on that. If you want to watch the whole discussion, there it is. It's going to be in podcast format, all of that. So I think it's really going to help a lot of people out. And I really appreciate y'all being like vulnerable and sharing yourselves and just giving me your time and all of that. I really love y'all. And I'm secure enough in my masculinity, in my sexuality to be able to say, I love you, Lonnie G. I love you, Salvador. I love you, Emrys. I love you, Cam. I hope y'all have a great rest of your night.
You too, bro. Wait, before y'all all go, are you ending the recording or is everyone leaving?
Hey, I just wanted to briefly thank you for taking the time to watch this video, whether it was on regular speed or 2x speed, whatever it was. Just thank you for consuming the content. And around me, you should be able to see a few little buttons and logos for other recommended videos because, I make good content, new ones, but then I also have some really good old content too that you should probably check out. But make sure that if you really like this video, feel free to subscribe, to share. It really helps this humble channel to expand and reach more people and ultimately help more people. So once again, thanks for watching, and